Today's guest has been described as one of the world's most fearless men.
And I think it was borderline suicide. I'm going to die if I continue.
Almost died alone in the desert.
No van, no tarmac roads, no evacuation plan, no helicopter pickup, and my insurance was invalid.
He swam across croc-infested waters.
So many of the times I'd be like, how can we cross this? And they're like, you're good to cross it. We've made a deal with the croc. And I'm like,
whoa.
What do you mean you made it?
Hold on.
They genuinely
I want to
believe
see the
that as
clauses
well.
on this contract. And was even offered another man's wife.
He pointed to me and his wife. He pointed then to his bed and just joined his. And I didn't know what to do in that situation because that was so awkward.
He contracted the deadliest strain of malaria while completing a Guinness World Record.
So I'm there hiking, managing to still do a marathon a day with malaria, but I didn't know.
And now he's back with a new challenge, voyaging through one of the world's last truly wild locations, Suriname in the Amazon rainforest.
We might even come across stuff that not only maybe uncontacted tribes, but species that haven't been discovered. When people think of Madagascar compared to Mongolia, they kind of see it as the smaller.
I think of the cartoon movie.
And the cartoon, yeah.
I've got to be
That
honest
is an
with you.
insight into Chip's brain for you, ladies and
Hey,
gentlemen.
you're a star of that movie, by the way, in Melbourne.
I am. Respect me. Welcome back to another episode of The Fellas. And what are you licking your lips for?
I just had, you know what? I just had a brand of chocolate.
Yeah, a brand of chocolate, that you really enjoyed.
Yeah.
I just had a brand of muffin that was unbelievable.
That's good, because don't say the name. I only mess with HelloFresh.
This episode is sponsored by HelloFresh. HelloFresh is super convenient and especially for summertime. Okay, so there's no more hassle about waking up and deciding, right, I've got to plan my meal for today or even my meals for the week. Instead, you grab yourself your weekly subscription and what do you get, Chip? You get fresh ingredients delivered to you.
Sounds beautiful.
And it comes with recipes.
Yes.
So you just follow the recipe with your fresh ingredients and boom, you've got a banging meal.
Look, you see, it's summer. It's summer. We're about to be 30. Like, this is one of our last big summers. We're going on holiday quite a few times, but this is the convenience, the ultimate convenience of HelloFresh. You can actually pause your subscription, okay? So it's not being delivered whilst you're away and going
Our money
off.
ain't being wasted.
No. You come back, unpause, boom. Fresh delivery of HelloFresh. Perfect ingredients, everything ready to go.
I love it. Let's be honest. I don't like spending my time cooking, okay?
Yeah.
I'd rather be spending my time outdoor, especially during the summer when the weather's like this, the amount of social things going on. I want to be spending less time cooking and more time with my friends. And that's what HelloFresh allows you to do. Now, they have got a fantastic setup that, like I said, the ingredients arrive. You have a step-by-step guide. It's really as straightforward and as simple as it gets. It requires minimal planning. You don't have the stress of deciding what you're going to need for the day. It just happens. And then from there, you also have, it's £3.15 for a serving.
That's
like, you're getting proper value here with HelloFresh.
Look at some of the meals we got here. We got gyro-style beef kofta tacos with chips and roasted garlic shot. Only 30 minutes it takes as well, and it looks unbelievable. Sausages in mushroom sauce. Very fancy, very English. Love it. What else we got? Indonesian-style spiced, fragrant chicken curry. You know, I love a chicken curry. I'm all over that, to be honest. In fact, I'm going to take that one. I'll be taking this box with me. And you don't need this.
I'm going to take both. I'm going to take both of them. Click the link in the description, or even better, scan that QR code. Yeah, we're ahead of the game. All right, what you want to do is use our code Hello Fellas at checkout to get yourself 60% off plus 25% off the next 2 months. And my favorite part, free desserts for life. Yes. Now, we sorted you out. This is an exclusive offer and a limited offer as well because it's only available for a certain amount of time. Let's get back to the episode. Listen up here. Today's a big day because for the first time in a long time, I walked to work. I went on an adventure.
I thought you were going to say we got a good guess, but you talking about walking
bro,
outside.
Let me marinate my segue, bro. You know I'm cooking up a gem. So I woke up this morning and I said, look, it's important that I achieve something today. So I looked at myself in the mirror and I thought, what do the best people in the world do? They go on adventures.
Yeah.
Right? And so I looked at myself and said, what should be my adventure be today?
Walk Finn to the corner shop.
And it needed to be something that had a little bit of danger involved.
And what could that possibly be for you?
I walked through Hackney to get to the offer. Now tell me, I've heard a lot of stories about people doing some crazy stuff.
It's gentrified now. It's just full of white people selling £5 coffees.
I had got a coffee on the way as well. Yeah. Anyways, guys, we've got somebody who definitely did not get a coffee on their last adventure. It is none other than Ash Dykes.
Yes!
Dun, 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 dun.
It sounds quite pathetic,
Amazing. Good to see you.
Welcome, brother. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Amazing,
You know
bro.
what? I'm gonna be honest. Like when I saw all your stuff and I see these crazy adventures and I see what you've been on, but you've dressed so well. Like you know, I can't imagine you were dressed like this in Mongolia and stuff.
I was
but
not. No.
Yeah, you look good.
Fully covered as well in the desert. Fully covered. Top man hat. Oh,
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like, you know, somebody that has done as many adventures and gone on as many journeys as you have, I kind of, before you got here and you obviously have dressed quite well, I had this vision of you turning up in like combat pants,
fisherman hat,
like
whole
fisherman
thing,
hat, maybe
man.
like some boots.
like just stepped out of the actual desert.
yeah.
in character.
You know what? Maybe I should next time. Just like bring the rucksack. You know, everything. Throw the chicken in there too.
Yeah, like to be honest with you, mate, you look like you genuinely are just on lunch break from working down at Canary Wharf.
Love it.
So
Goldman Sachs.
but what people don't know is that you are one of the most accomplished people that we've ever had on this podcast.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
And I would just love it because
It doesn't take a lot to beat the others, I'll be honest.
yeah, it's not a massive trophy to have, but I feel like I could rattle through and talk about some of your achievements, but I think it would just be amazing to hear it from you and just sort of top line really quickly, because we'll dive deep into a lot of your journeys and your adventures, but just like, what the hell do you do?
So I'm an adventurer, extreme athlete, 3-time world first record holder. And so for the past 14 years, I've been doing various adventures and expeditions around the world, reckless, often illegal, dangerous, lucky to be alive. And these adventures continue to grow bigger and better and better. And now it kind of accidentally turned into a career, you know? So now this is my full-time thing. The title I would put on that, I have no idea. Adventurer, explorer. Can you say explorer?
Badass motherfucker.
I love
All
it.
right? Let's go with that.
He said it.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, a lot of these adventures, I mean, you mentioned it there, it's become like a career.
Yeah.
And is that a recent thing where you've been able to turn what you do in these adventures that you go on into something that can actually be full-time? Like early on in some of these adventures, you know, I want to talk about Mongolia, something that you achieved like, you know, 10 years ago. Yeah. Back then, it was it a full-time job? Like, were you, you know, working 9 to 5, then coming home, planning it? Like, how does it work?
It was that I would say Mongolia was the catalyst. It was the one that I thought, hold on, if I achieve this and it's a world first, surely I'll be able to monetize this somehow. But all of the previous adventures before Mongolia, I wasn't on social media, which pros and cons with it. You know, I missed out being able to share all of the crazy adventures, you know, online. That's the beauty with that now. But at the same time, I was able to just be there by myself or with a mate and just be present, enjoy the moment. But with Mongolia, I was kind of like, if it's going to be a world first, I need to try to document it somehow. But I wasn't that great at pushing stuff out online. It's a whole separate beast, isn't it? And but on completion, I saw the first bit of finance coming through. And I can say that I could talk about this now, and that's the good thing about it. I made no more, the 12 months on completion of Mongolia, a world first record, no more than £3,000 for the whole tour. So I had to stay living with my parents. I was 24, just like, shit, what can I do next? You know, I thought I'd make a little bit more money than this. And I was just like, right, I need to crack on with the next thing then. And that's when I realized that I need to continue. It almost got to a point where it was too difficult to continue, but I was too deep to turn back. And so I had already invested up to Mongolia 4 years into this, because it was the passion. And then it was a case of, right, Madagascar, we go again. After that, I made no more than 10, 12,000. So I was like, shit.
Mate, that's 4x on what you made from Mongolia.
Yeah,
you know, we got to think of it like that, the progression.
Yeah, and it was a really slow progression. I would say it was after the Yangtze in 2019 where I was like, right, okay, we're sorted now.
Yes.
But it took a long time to to get there, you know.
Yeah, it's a journey. But going back to the Mongolia one, so we've got it on the dock here anyway. But so we're talking solo and unsupported trek. Is this across the entire country, or and you quite literally are on your own, not a cameraman at least, or
fully no van, no tarmac roads, no people whatsoever, other than locals that I might come across. But on many times, I only came across a local every 8-9 days.
Wow!
So out there fully, no evacuation plan, no helicopter pickup, and my insurance was invalid. The only so-called help that I could receive is if I got into trouble, I'd have to text the agent in the capital city, and I'd need to allow for him, let's say 4 or 5 days for him to get to me if he finds me in time. So if you stand on the back end of a snake, or if you're suffering with heat stroke, 4 or 5 days, you're dead.
You're pretty much finished.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so just to clarify, like the challenge here, so it was to trek across the entirety of Mongolia.
Yes.
Across it in a maybe not in a straight line per se, but just across it.
I could have got away with doing it that way, but I wanted to. I don't know why. I wanted to go down south,
right,
deep into the Gobi Desert, and so effectively it was 3 weeks over the Altai Mountains, 5 weeks across the Gobi Desert, and a further 3 weeks up through the Mongolian steppe. And because it's so remote, and I'd be alone for its entirety, I would need to pull a trailer carrying everything that I needed to survive. And the trailer weighed 18 stone, 120 kilograms for the whole.
That's already... So if you were going on your own with a backpack, fairs. But now you're pulling not the whole way, or like part of the way?
The entire way.
Yeah. Okay, right.
The reason being for that was it's too long of a distance between water sources. Okay. So let's say 2 weeks between each water well. That's how I would sort of collect the water. You would need to carry on your back, if you didn't have a desert cart, around 30 liters of water, which is already 30 kilograms with nothing else. No sleeping, no food, no nothing, no electronics.
Yeah, man.
And so it was only possible to really go by pulling a trailer.
And so, God, you must be going then quite slow. Like,
you know what? I was, because of the daylight hours, it was about 16 hours a day.
Yep.
I was managing to smash out a marathon a day.
Wow.
Whilst pulling it.
And how many days in total was that expedition?
It was 78 days.
78 days.
Altogether.
And is that, would you say, one of your shorter ones?
Compared to the other ones, that was my first
ever.
Sort of, that was the biggest one at the time, but then they progressively got bigger.
Proddy, you're not going to say something?
No, I'm going to allow him. I like them shoes. I'm a big fan of them Sambas.
Damn. Not exactly the Russell I was looking for, but thank you. I'll take it. They are, they're lovely, really, ain't they?
Well, what about these bad boys then? Salomon XT6s. These are clear of those.
Okay.
If you're wondering where I got these, they're from Size.
Snap. Me too. They got a good range to choose from, and I'm a big fan of the way they blend music, art, fashion all into one.
Yeah, you know what?
I like that.
I'll be honest with you. I've been a fan of their stuff for a little while now. They seem to have all the brands that I'm into right now, which is the likes of Hoka, Salomon, Adidas, A6, literally loads more as well.
Love it.
These Salomon XT6s, by the way, best all-round shoe. Argue amongst yourselves. These things, if I need to go for a quick run, a sprint to the shop, whatever it is, I can do that in these. But I'll be honest with you, lately I've been knocking around East London, little latte in hand, and it suits the vibe as well. This thing just works for everything.
Yeah, man.
You can't say the same.
No, I'm one of those guys that I'm always wanting to buy a new pair of trainers, you know.
Right, well now I've put you on here, okay? Now I'm sure there's a bunch of you guys listening, dialed in, or watching, right? And if you guys want to get involved, then there's going to be a QR code on screen right now. You can get a 10% off discount right, when you sign up to Size newsletter. So make sure you sign up to the Size newsletter. You're going to get yourself 10% off. Link will be in the description. Make sure you click it and get involved.
Visit size.co.uk or download the Size app.
What's your size?
And logistically, when it comes to something like that, I mean, it's your first one. I imagine things are slightly different now, but when it comes to the planning of that, you're a lot younger. How many years ago was that? 10 years ago?
10 years ago.
10 years ago. You're a lot younger. You've got this trip in front of you that is 80 days long.
Yeah.
You're just doing it unsupported, no one with you. You've got to pull a car across the desert, all this kind of stuff. Like, where do you even start in planning something like that, just to make sure you don't die?
It's very hard. I look back now and I think it was borderline suicide.
Yeah.
A previous soldier had attempted 3 times and he was evacuated on all 3 accounts. And he looked like Jason Statham. He was a badass. I was a 22-year-old beach bum living in Thailand. I was a Muay Thai fighter competing for money. I was a master scuba diving instructor. So I'd never been to a desert. I was on an island, on a cheap island. And when I figured that this guy had attempted 3 times, he had single-handedly crossed the Sahara Desert. But when it came to the Gobi Desert and pulling a trailer, 3 times he was evacuated.
Wow. So you've looked at that and gone, right, he's failed 3 times.
So I've looked at that. Yeah, I've looked at that, and initially I was like, fuck this. So I pulled out the map of Europe and I was like, let's walk across a safer, more populated country. But I thought, just because no one's found a way to do it, it doesn't mean it can't be done.
Was there a reason why you chose Mongolia in the first place? Like, what was the reason for attempting this particular challenge?
It was the curiosity of the country itself. I had now been on the travel route up to now for about 2 years. I was a scuba instructor, and so I would come across travelers from all over the world. And the main topic of conversation is to talk about where are you going, where have you been? And not one had mentioned anything about Mongolia. This was 2010 to 2012 now. And I was like, why is no one going to Mongolia? And then I realized it didn't really open to outsiders until 2010. And it was very difficult to get a permit and a visa there. Unless you were doing business, it was really hard as a tourist. And then I started looking more into Mongolia and I realized, it's this massive place, huge, second largest landlocked country, home to the Gobi Desert, to the Altai Mountains. You've got your camel herders down south, your reindeer tribes up north, your sort of Kazakh eagle hunters, when they're on horseback with an eagle perched on their hand.
Yeah,
some foxes, wolves.
Sick.
And I was just like, this is such a harsh country. A brutal country. And before this, I had done lots of pretty reckless adventures from 19 to 22. I had crossed borders illegally into Myanmar. I was pulled in by a Burmese hill tribe and taught how to survive in the jungle whilst they were trying to migrate over to Thailand. I'd cycled countries. I'd done a little bit of everything. And I realized when you're on a road, there's people. And when there's people, there's food, there's water, there's safety. So with Mongolia, I wanted to just get off the road, be self-reliant, and really test myself out in the elements. And see what it was about.
Yeah, speaking of food, actually, obviously you described how you dealt with the water situation. What was the food situation for that expedition?
Food, I took 5.5 weeks worth of ration packs.
So what, you pre-made them yourself kind of
they
thing?
They were
or?
expedition foods, so ready-made.
Like the camping things where...
dehydrated and you just pour hot water into them.
Oh yeah, that
which came the trick, right? Because I was in the Gobi Desert and I didn't want to waste water that I needed to hydrate myself on the food.
Yeah.
So there was a point in time when not only did I suffer with heat stroke, where I was sort of delirious, slowly dying and feared losing my life in the desert, I also couldn't eat because I didn't want to waste the water on the food. So I was also starving. Horrible combination.
So I was going to say it's almost like a bit of a catch-22 there.
Yeah,
you're in a bit of trouble.
Yeah.
So you the whole journey is in Mongolia is like what 1,500 roughly
miles,
around that. And it was that a top to bottom job? You mentioned obviously the mountains and heading through the desert, and you did both of those.
Yeah, so that was west to east.
Okay, west
because it's a lot wider than it is in length. So the Altai Mountains are more in the west. Gobi Desert down south, and then sort of the Mongolian steppe towards the east.
Got a map of it on screen.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Here we go.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm glad you pulled that up because I was going to ask the stupid question of where exactly is Mongolia.
So do you go from left to right on this image, yeah?
That's right. Yeah. So the far left, and then down south, about there, you're right, and then curled back up northeast.
So there were no shortcuts here, pretty much, mate. You did it probably the longest way possible, right?
Yeah.
And so you mentioned the desert there, and obviously the Gobi Desert. The first thing that sort of pops into my mind, or I'm sure a lot of people's mind when they think of a desert, is just like the extreme heat.
Yeah.
But I lived in Egypt for a small amount of time, and we would school trips would go out to the desert and do camping out there. And in the evenings it got freezing,
plummets, right?
So cold.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't necessarily realize just how cold it can get in the desert.
Yeah.
And so obviously with you making that journey across, and during the day when it's so hot, you almost want to be wearing, just your boxers, walking through. But then for it to completely swing the other way, was that something that you struggled to like regulate your body temperature as you were walking through the desert? Or
yeah, it was a struggle. It didn't drop that cold. It probably changed in 15-20 degrees because of the season that I was there in the Gobi. But yeah, I do remember my body sort of fluctuating, hot, cold, and even when suffering with the temperatures. I remember during the day I was cold in the heat. That's when my body really started to sort of freak out and fail on me effectively. I remember being in a minus 40 degrees Celsius sleeping bag, shivering in the heat of the Gobi Desert. And that's when I realized this is bad.
And so what is that? What's that called? What's your body going through?
That is now going through heat stroke. So that's when your body is desperately sort of trying to cool itself down, but then gets to a point where it doesn't know what to do. Certain things within your body start shutting down. It didn't get to the point where things did. Like, there's no permanent damage, I hope, touch wood. But I could almost feel my organs drying up,
Oh, that doesn't sound nice.
Like, it's because people ask, you never want to be asked this, but if people ask what's better, to go in the cold or to go out in the heat. With the cold, because I've faced hypothermia too, with the cold, it's really painful, but then you face this sort of numbing stage. And most victims caught with hypothermia have been found with their gloves off, their scarves, because they get to a point where they think they're hot, they start taking off all of their clothes, and then they fall asleep and they die semi-peacefully.
Yeah.
Whereas in the Gobi Desert, you feel everything, like fingernails scratching at the floor to the next water source. It didn't get that bad, but it was pretty much that bad. I remember hiding under my trailer, and there was that shock of capture of, oh fuck, this is what the previous guy meant.
So what, you were hiding under the trailer to stay out of the sun?
To just escape the sun.
That's the only shade you've got?
It's the only shade. And I couldn't walk at night either, because you've got these small tracks. And when I say small tracks, they're kind of like goat or yak tracks. And they are your lifeline to the next water source. So at nighttime, my biggest fear was, if I lose that, I could be walking further and further away from the next water source.
Wow, it's like tracking animals to find water, essentially.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
because they know where all the, especially the camels, where all the water points are. So you map and compass, because the GPS failed me. I'm out there, so there's no morale of seeing the lads at the end of the day. There's no van. It's just a case of, I'm on this track. I have to make the right decision. I have to motivate myself. I have to keep going. Otherwise, I'm just going to die.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously you got the family back home who you've told going on this expedition. They must be waiting so long to get that message from you, because obviously you're out in the middle of fucking nowhere. You ain't messaging anyone, I imagine. No satellite phone or anything like that.
We had a little text only in reach.
Yep.
I think I could afford to send like 2-3 texts per day. So effectively, how this happened is, when I was living in Thailand, you don't get much money as a scuba diver. And so that's why I was training and fighting in Muay Thai, because if you win a fight, you get paid enough money to cover maybe 2-3 months worth of rent.
Ooh.
And so I was doing all of this when I initially had the idea about Mongolia. And so I had to give up the life in Thailand. There was a lot of research done, because I didn't know it was a record. I thought best way to go about it is just contact those people who have done it before. I thought, like, everything's been done now, and it was only when I started to bring on more researchers and the teams really started to expand that they said, if you complete this solo and unsupported, because Mongolians have crossed the world, they've crossed their own country plenty of times. Yeah. But the key factor here is the solo and unsupported. Even they think it's stupid. You walk with camels or horses or yaks, or as a family community, you don't go out into the desert alone.
Yeah.
And they couldn't build wheeled contraptions like we're able to build now. So you'd have to take some sort of camel with you. And anyway, I then realized I want to make this happen, but I had to give up my life in Thailand. I sold my scuba diving kit. I think I sold it for about 150, 200 pounds. And anyway, I took a flight back to the UK with only a couple of £100 left in my account. So I moved in with my parents. I couldn't afford no gym membership. And so it's from this point where it started adding up, where I couldn't afford evacuation, because the previous guy was connected to the Russian military and the helicopter was able to whip him out, where I didn't have that. And even the insurance, in Mongolia, they don't insure people out in the country who are unsupported.
Yeah.
Probably because they're
that
looking at
makes
you
sense.
going, yeah, this is his own
gonna die.
stupid
Why would
fucking
we insure
fault.
that?
Like, we're not spending our country's money bailing this idiot out
on
of
this
here.
dosser who's clearly going to die. Yeah.
And so what you had to sort of build up.
And then we had
finances to that.
so we had to slightly build up. Like, I can be honest here, it cost me no more for a world first, then cost me no more than 5k.
Yeah, because
Which
you
is
know what, I was
crazy. One of
seeing
the
a lot
cheapest
of
it's got to be.
saw a lot of comments just on your TikToks and like people saying, oh, how does he get to do all this? And then people being like, oh, parents' money, blah, blah, blah. And then some other people backing you up saying, actually, because it's a lot cheaper countries, you might be able to do this a little bit cheaper than you think.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
like to hit the price of that.
Exactly that. Yeah. And it depends how you want to go. I know that some people get all of the kit, you know, and if you can do that, definitely do it. But I couldn't do that.
You go in on
but
your
I
own
still
as well.
wanted to do it, you know. So even when the first away from home adventure at 19, I cycled across Cambodia and the entire length of Vietnam on £10 bicycles. £10.
Wow.
We had no pump. We had no puncture repair kit. We had a non-waterproof tent. We had a basket and a pink bell. In the basket, we would just throw a loaf of bread, peanut butter, no electronics whatsoever, just a camera, no phone, nothing. And then we went to an internet cafe, put like 10 Vietnamese dong in the internet cafe for 10 minutes. And we just wrote down, put the paper up onto the screen and started tracing these different town names through Vietnam. And then we tried to pronounce these town names to the locals. They would just point. They were just like that way.
Yeah.
I'm like, but not in English. They were just like, keep pointing, point. And, you know, so there's ways to definitely make it happen. Yeah.
Wow, man.
Going back to the Mongolia trip,
Yes.
and heading through there, like obviously going through the desert. Did you ever encounter other people in that desert? There surely must be tribes, somewhat locals that survive in the desert themselves.
Yeah.
What were they like towards you as well?
They were, so I did come across people, not in the thick of the desert not at the time where I needed it most.
Yeah,
as always, you know, I'd always come across them when I didn't really need to see them. But they were always amazing, you know, really sort of hospitable. And I know that Mongolia and the nomads get a lot of stick because they can be quite aggressive and their main sport is wrestling and they can drink a lot.
Damn, this is the manliest country of all. This is alpha as fuck.
Yeah, this is like, they will wrestle your ass.
We will wrestle for dinner.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
And so I was kind of wary of that, but I think they had this respect because they saw the trailer. So what I found is when they saw me, they would come over, they would want to take this 4-point harness off me and connect it and then start walking and then start feeling your shoulders and your back, you know, so they would kind of would see and have respect.
Yeah.
Whereas I hated that because I was slowly dying. I was dehydrated. I was starving. But the females were always nurturing. They'd see that you're sunburned, that you are super skinny. I lost about 13 kilograms throughout. And so they would always invite you inside their little white felt tent, like their gur or their yurt, sit you down, give you water. Whereas the guys were just like, oh, give me your trailer, you know, and jabbing you in the arms.
Banner, and you're there like, I need a drink.
Yeah, I need water, and they're just handing you out a bottle of vodka.
Yeah, sit me down, let me drink. Yeah, it's one of those. But I never came across any hostile locals throughout. Yeah. They were always sort of really wanting to, because they know how harsh the environment is. And so they were shocked to see me, but they also wanted to help. And I think the biggest story was when it was pretty creepy, actually, because you could picture back in sort of Genghis Khan days. I turned around in the middle of the desert, and I saw like a cloud of dust behind me. And it was this guy galloping on horseback. It took him ages to get to me because it's so flat, the desert. It was like a cartoon. So I just see this dust cloud coming towards me. And he approached, and it was literally just to give me like a takeaway chai, like a takeaway tea. And there was no words exchanged. It was just like he threw it to me, you know, nodded, and then kicked his horse and boom. And I was just left with this water, wow.
Oh, that's straight out of a movie. That
like a movie.
Yeah,
that's brilliant.
And it was kind of then I started getting nervous. I was looking ahead. Fucking hell. only he knows what's in front of me. I've never been, you know.
Yeah.
It's like kind of this is such a weird comparison, right? But so like, let's say, you know, I'm driving and on the motorway, and on the other side there's been a crash and there's hella traffic, but you're driving going, the people that are about to join the back of this queue, they've got no idea the miles ahead of them. I'll just imagine the same thing for you. You go in the distance like, this guy's fucked when he gets here, by the way.
Yeah. It was that.
You know what I'm telling you, bro? I've had that.
Like the North Circular or something to the Mongolian desert. I've never. That's a new one for me. But I'm here.
Obviously, the other side to the desert, of course, was the mountains.
Yes.
Now, you know, I can semi-envision you dragging a trailer through the desert, but through the mountains, that must have been, you know, it's 150 kilos that you said.
120.
Sorry, 120.
18 stone. What's that? Like Anthony Joshua's weight? Heavyweight boxer?
Yeah.
That's a heavy
Yeah.
load. And I'm not a big guy either, you know, so that was a lot.
Yeah.
About 70 kg.
So never mind
it's
doing that
almost
up
double.
and down, like where it's probably a lot more.
With no brakes as well. And that was the scary thing.
So
if
the
you get
down
into
was almost worse, was it?
Man. Well, you just got to sit in the trail at that point and just enjoy it.
Yeah. Both up and down.
It's a little roller coaster.
Yeah. But up and down, because one wrong footing, it's either going to pull you down backwards or going to push you down forwards. And there were many sketchy times where I was just locked in, where I thought, oh shit, I can't take 1 foot off the ground. I need to think carefully with where my next foot placement's going to be, because they're not like mountains, but it's a heavy, and you can feel the trailers pulling you back down. You know, the tension on the carabiners and whatnot, and you're just like, oh shit. But yeah, wrong footing, it's pulling you back down. There's no brakes.
And what sort of wildlife would you encounter up in the mountains? I suppose the desert as well.
Yeah.
Was it on that trip? What was some of the stuff that you would come across?
It was pretty barren for wildlife. I would see horses in the west, horses and eagles. Wolves I didn't see, and fortunately or unfortunately, I didn't hear them either because the wind was so strong.
But they are out there. Wolves?
Yeah, they're grey wolves as well, so they're the biggest. And I remember two locals, again on horseback, sort of coming over to me. And I clearly knew what they meant. I was just trying to ignore what they were trying to say. But they were quite vivid with their sort of up ahead. There's like wolves, and they were doing like, ah, rah, and they were trying to say, don't go there. And like you.
Yeah.
So I was just like, okay, they mean some form of dog or wolf down there. I'm going to die if I continue. I continued, and it was fine.
Yeah.
I saw what I think were wolf footprints, but they didn't really bother me.
You got tracked by a pack of wolves once, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the Yangtze, the third one, which we'll get, and that was actually a day after they had killed a local. But we'll
chat about that in a minute.
Yeah, that's a while.
I want to ask. So when you're out there in the Mongolian desert, let's say you're halfway through the trip. At what point, like, how are you figuring out how long left you've got? Really, do you kind of have a rough idea in your mind, like probably got another 40, 30 days here? What's the process there?
You do based on the distance that you're covering.
Yeah,
and looking at the maps and realizing how far you've come. So it's very rough.
Just jotting it down. It's just a rough idea.
Yeah, just jotting it down. Probably until a month before, though, because you know the speed that you're going at. If it continues to go the way it's been going, you can almost predict it, like within days. And so I do remember thinking that I would be finished, you know, within 80 days, because it was anticipated to take 100 days.
Yeah.
And I was saying to my agent, nah, I think I can do it within 75 to 80 days. And it was pretty accurate, 78 days. But then I would have done it faster, but I was hit by dehydration. And I was then completely off the radar for 8 days, trying my best to recover.
So explain that to us. Where did that happen in that journey? So
that was the most southern section and deepest section of the Gobi Desert. Right. And I think how it really happened was when I was in the Altai Mountains. Do you know when you're out in the cold and you don't really, even if you're exercising, you don't really feel the need to drink water? Whereas you could do the same sort of exercises out in the heat and you need to drink water. Yeah. Well, I think in the Altai Mountains, I just wasn't drinking a lot of water. Therefore, I didn't want to carry as much water because it was heavy pulling it up and down the Altai Mountains. And then I believe I slowly dehydrated myself for the 3 weeks over the Altai Mountains. In the Gobi Desert, I didn't really pick back up on the fluid intake. And eventually, when the heat did hit me, because at first it was sandstorms, it was blizzards, it was you name it, and then the weather did eventually subside, and that's where the heat increased dramatically. 40 plus degrees Celsius, no breeze, no trees, so no natural shelter or shade, no clouds. And I do remember the trailer now. So I had 4 tires on the trailer. And in the Altai Mountains, it was annoying because I was hitting rocks. But in the Gobi Desert, it was gravel. And that was all right. I was kind of like, oh, nice. But there were many sections within, especially as I started to make myself further south, that it was soft sand.
Yeah, I was going to say taking a wheel, because in my head, I was there like, oh, will you swap it out to like a sled?
Yeah. Effectively, I should have done.
Yeah.
I just, again, that it comes back down to the funds. So the trailer was actually built for free in a family friend's back garden.
Oh, wow.
And he couldn't use carbon fiber or anything. So he used mild steel. So on an empty load with nothing inside the trailer, it's already 40 kilograms with nothing in it, you know? So
yeah, you needed that carbon fiber F1 kit.
How did you get it over there?
We exported it beforehand.
Yeah. Did you have to take it down, rebuild it when you got there, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. We had to send it to the capital, Ulaanbaatar, and then we had to send it from the capital. I think it was driven then from the capital to Olgi.
Okay,
the
cool.
city west. And yeah, it was just pulling this trailer, and I started creeping deeper and deeper into dehydration, and then it hit heat stroke, and then I started to become delirious. And it was at that point that I kind of knew I had fucked up, because I'd been consuming too much water at this point, but I desperately needed to. And along the maps, I have confirmed and unconfirmed water sources mapped. And the next water source was an unconfirmed water source, meaning we don't know if it's
praying.
And it was fucking dry at the worst point that I needed it.
Mentally, that's got to kill you, though.
Oh, for sure. Mentally, I wasn't giving up mentally, but you initially face that shock of capture, like that panic, like this is real. I'm not just talking about it from my sofa anymore. I'm here. I'm out here doing it. I'm skinny. My toenails are falling off. My blisters. The 4-point harness is rubbing. The trailer feels like 500 kilograms because the soft sand. The sun is just beating down. There's just no escape from it whatsoever. I could hide under my trailer, but my legs would be absolutely melting. And then when I came across that dry water, I was just, that's when I started almost feeling a little bit sorry for myself. I started to think of family and friends. And I knew I had 2 options now. There was still an option to contact my agent. But at that point, I genuinely didn't believe that I could survive to get to me and get me out 5-6 days.
Yeah.
Not a chance.
Because you'd have to stay put as well then at that point, right?
Yeah. And I just needed to get out of that heat as well. And it would have taken a while for him to get me out of the heat because my body was now overheating. But I did believe I could survive 4 days. I thought, and 4 days was to the next water source, and that was confirmed. And that was the hardest thing, because I've always been a big believer of visualization. But I just couldn't visualize 4 days. I was in too much agony. Like each step, it almost sent this shudder, like some stab or poke on your spine with a needle right up your back. And every movement just felt that I was exerting myself. There'd be this lactic acid buildup with each step. It would be horrendous. And I remember just hiding under the trailer, looking at the watch, and almost an hour had gone by. And I'm like, I can't do this. It's going to be 4 days to then 5 days. And I don't think I can last 5 days. And so I broke down the goals. I was like, I could see 100 meters. It's
you were talking like 100 meter goals.
100 meters, yeah, 100 meters.
We're not talking like, that's 5K done. It's like, no, there's 100 meters
exactly.
done, mate.
If I could get 200 meters, that would be like, yes, we got there. So it would be 100 meters, rest under the trailer, but I'd be timing. I'd be looking at my watch, thinking no more than 5 minutes, because it would be an hour at a time. It would just whiz by, and then get back up, strap the 4-point harness, another 100 meters, hide. 100 meters, 5 minutes, 100 meters, 5 minutes. And effectively by doing that, by breaking my goals down, it did save my life. And I stopped thinking about my family and my friends and what if this is it? Because you'd walk past camel carcasses as well. And you'd just be like, fucking hell, if I die, because your brain's scrambled and you're hallucinating at this point, you just kind of like, you can almost picture your body still trapped to the trailer just like rotting away.
Yeah.
And I had nightmares of people just coming over, just taking from my trailer, not knowing me, so they don't care, and then going back to the small town. But I just about made it. It was excruciating, and it took me 8 days to then recover. I just stayed stationed near that water source where there was a small group of people, and that was it. For 8 days, I was just like
Drinking water.
drinking.
Were they
resting.
taking care of you, those people?
Yeah, effectively, they let me seek refuge there, and I stayed based there. And I do remember trying to leave the tent, or just trying to leave and go out into the sun, and I returned back instantly.
Yeah, it was that bad.
And then I got myself a bottle that I would urinate in. I'd piss it in the bottle. I couldn't even leave to take a piss. I just not want to go outside, because it would just be like this ringing, this pain. It was horrendous. And of course, everyone was worried. My mum and dad found out then, and they were like panicking, saying, "You need to get home." And at that point, I knew
the world's yellowest piss.
Yeah, it was. You know what? It was dark, so almost orangey to black. And I since then realised that's because you're pissing out dead blood cells.
Yeah. Jesus.
So that took a while to recover from. Well, 8 days, but I felt good enough then, 100% to be able to push on. Because I knew that it was at this section where the previous guy called for evacuation. And maybe I would have if I had it, but the fact that it was do or die, maybe that's the reason I completed it. You know, maybe if I had that big red button.
You speak about this guy that had previously tried it. What were some of the... had you spoken to him about this trip?
I did, yeah.
You did? And what... I mean, I can imagine he sort of went to you like, well, good luck, mate. But he must have given you a bit of wisdom or something about, look, you've got to keep an eye out for this. What sort of things
did he... That was the first email, actually, that he sent. So I just randomly reached out. I felt like such an amateur as well, 22, you know, and he was like late 30s, fucking it's savage. And I was just like, hey, buddy, what are the dangers? And he got back with this big list saying, look, there are many dangers. You've got the drunken nomadic drifters, the steep ravines, the stagnant water, the dry wells, the snow blizzards, the sand blizzards, the wolves, and the list just went on and on and on. And I remember looking at that, and then it was only when I looked into him and his experience that it put me off for about 2 weeks. I just stopped everything Mongolia. I just stopped. I was just like, this is reckless. But then it was just playing on in my mind. It became dangerous teaching people to scuba dive, because I'd be 40 meters deep. Students are there for the first time at 40 meters doing their advanced or whatever, which I believe you've done.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about the desert. I'm thinking about, you know, like, and you get nitrogen narcosis as well. So it feels like you're a little bit tipsy at 40 and you're like, woo. So I'm thinking about the desert, forgetting that I've got like 4 students with me behind me. So I was like, this is not good. I need to, it was, I have to do it. Otherwise I'll regret at least not attempting it. And I did risk my life, and it was very minimal. It was very reckless. And even the guy who I emailed, he said at the bottom of the email, which never made sense until when I was in the Gobi Desert, he said, remember, incredible is the ability to continue no matter what. And that taunted me. I did not know what that meant.
Yeah.
I was bricking it. So I was training in Muay Thai and running up the jungle, you know, fully clothed in 30 plus degrees, just overplaying this quote in my head. Because it scared me. I didn't know what he meant by that.
But you found out in that desert.
In the desert, yeah. And it was in a weird way, because no one's incredible. But it was almost like I needed a role model when I was out there. And because my head was so scrambled, I almost personified an incredible being in front of me. And it was almost like I was seeing this figure, as I say, because my head was everywhere. And what it was doing, I was asking, what would it do in this situation? How would it survive? And it would break its goals down. It would get up. It would push on. And anyway, I could almost see this thing out in the middle of the Gobi Desert with me, where it would get out the trailer, push on, and I would be like, shit, I've got to go. And I'd try to keep up. And this thing was getting further and further away, but I was trying to replicate what it was doing, because there was no one to look to. So I almost created some... I can't even fully explain it. It's bizarre.
So like an imaginary pacer.
Yeah.
Almost.
Like
yeah,
an imaginary
it is.
friend.
Yeah.
That's what you had.
Yeah, it was almost like I just created this reason to give myself something to follow in the footsteps of, and hopefully survive this thing that I'm going through.
Is it true? Sorry.
Yeah, go on.
Is it true the locals called you the lonely snow leopard?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's a badass name, you know.
That's cool.
I like that.
Was that the Mongolian trip? Or
the Mongolia trip.
Yeah,
what they
wow.
called
Okay.
it.
That is a good name.
Yeah, you know what? They fully got behind it because I thought, you know, with my naivety, am I arrogant going out there for the first time claiming to do this? We had spoke to a lot of the Mongolians, many organizations, societies, because we really hunted down people who had done it alone and unsupported before. And they were fully behind it. They were like, look, there's no evidence to suggest anyone's ever done it solo and unsupported. And we fully back you and we're with you. And they really were. And it was only about 3 weeks in, 2.5 weeks in, that I had a little bit of signal where the agent called me and he was like, oh, you know, you're becoming known in the capital city of Ulaanbaatar. I was like, what? Because I didn't have no money for PR. I wasn't doing any of that sort of stuff then either. And he said news stations are using photos and videos of other people, but with your name attached to it, because I wasn't sending photos and videos.
Yeah.
And they've come up with a nickname. And I was like, oh yeah, what's that? And he was like, they're all calling you the Lonely Snow Leopard. And at first I thought that was pretty cool. And I was just like, oh, that's a cool name, like, isn't it? Isn't it? And he was like, well, yeah, but because you've not yet been eaten by the wolves, and the snow leopard is the only other predator that gets left alone by the wolves. And that scared me because I wasn't yet out of the Altai Mountains. So I'm like, fucking hell, I've not made it yet, mate.
That could be the name of the dock, Snow Leopard.
Yeah.
Just a picture of
The
you.
Lonely Snow Leopard.
Cool.
Yeah.
It is a good name. I like that.
It's cool, that, isn't it? Yeah.
And one of the stories that we had written down here was about how somebody had actually offered you their wife.
Yes.
A Kazakh man had offered you his wife. Now, you've got to explain to me how something like that happens and what...
Where exactly?
Yeah. I need the address. What was the coordinate to the place where you got offered this?
All of us just rocking up here to see a man about his wife.
Oh, yeah, that was bizarre. It was one of those where I was told by my logistics manager beforehand that stuff kind of does have very rare, very hard to come by, but in some of the mountains in the west of Mongolia, in the Altai Mountains, there's a Kazakh community. It's very Kazakh heavy. And he said that stuff does and can happen, but hearing it and then it actually happening, you never really sort of align the two. And so I was out there for about 2 weeks up to this point, deep in the Altai Mountains. And I felt that it was cold, it was vulnerable, snow blizzards. It was only a day after the locals had said that I'd be eaten and hunted by the wolves. And then I could see a concrete hut in the distance. I could see it. And normally, if you see it in the distance, it will still take you almost like half a day to get to. But I had it in sight. And I arrived, and it was a small family, one guy, one lady, a kid as well, months old. And they invited me inside. So I was like, oh, amazing. And I'm all windswept, almost burnt as well, red face. And I go inside and I'm sipping on Kazakh chai for about 45 minutes. It was warm. They were welcoming. There wasn't much sort of words exchanged because we couldn't communicate, but it was a lot of sort of hand gestures, smiles, trying to tell them what I'm doing. And anyway, 45 minutes went by and I remember thinking, I need to crack on. I've got, at least another 3-4 hours of daylight I want to push on. So as I went to look at the guy, he was looking at me in a very weird way, sort of eyes squinted, like looking at me. And then he looked at his wife. And then he looked back to me, back at his wife, back to me, and I'm thinking, what the fuck's going on? And right there and then, all in hand gestures, he pointed to me and his wife. He pointed then to his bed and just joined his.
Oh my God.
And it took me a while. I was like, no, it took me a while. And then I clicked and I didn't know what to do in that situation because that was so awkward. So I looked at her. I looked at him. He looked at me. He's looking. We're all just exchanging these awkward looks.
It's out of a cartoon. Yeah, where it's like, I can see the camera panning quickly between everyone.
Yeah, and I put on a fake laugh, which I was. It was like a very nervous fake laugh because I thought, fucking hell, I can't offend the guy. Pull up a shotgun, laughing at my wife. And so I put on this fake laugh and he just like sort of stared at me. And then a couple of seconds later, starts laughing as well. And fucking hell, I made a swift exit and she continued breastfeeding her child.
That is wild.
And then I was out, I was walking thinking, I wonder if they were legit and it was serious, it all seemed very serious, or if right now they're laughing, you know, like,
we made him feel uncomfortable.
You never know if they're like, if there was
maybe
a
they just
setup.
looked at you and like, damn, this guy's out here, he's got another fucking 2-3 months, like he's getting no action. Like, let's see if we can let's see if we can sort him out. Something a little sweet.
Keep him going.
The way he didn't run it by his wife either. He was just like,
it wouldn't surprise. I mean, look, you're in the mountains, whatever. There's probably all sorts of stuff going on.
yeah,
out there.
and back in the ancient sort of explorers, that shit used to happen.
Oh, mate, yeah, I can. Yeah, you can imagine. And then so you had the finale, like the final bit. Obviously, it must be like sort of the week leading up to it must almost feel like a bit of a celebration week to an extent, or was it quite?
Finish.
Yeah, to finish, or was it really literally till the last day? It was painful, or did you mentally? Does things kind of switch when you get into that final stretch?
Yeah, mentally it switched. I do remember at least a week before I finished, it was this surreal feeling. As soon as I left the Gobi Desert and battled the dehydration for 8 days and pushed on. I was very nervous pushing on because of the sun and how fast it can take you. But as soon as I started to see grassland in the Mongolian steppe, that's when I was like, I've done it. But I hadn't done it. And that's also where a lot of people mentally give up as well, because it's hard to push on once in your mind you've already achieved it. In my mind, I had achieved it because nothing was going to stop me if the Gobi Desert didn't, and if I was able to push on where the previous guy wasn't. But I'm not done. I have to still put in the miles. Anything could happen. The grass is longer. Fork lightning is striking all around me, and I'm pulling a metal trailer. There's now amur pit vipers that hide in the grass, so I could stand on the back end of a snake. And so it was one of those where there were still dangers, but in my mind, I had done it.
Yeah,
and
that was the big test.
That was a big
dehydration moment.
Oh yeah, the dehydration. That was
the big test, and so getting yourself through that, it felt like there can't be much worse than that, surely.
Yeah, is what I was saying. Yeah. But I do remember some of the storms got so close as well. And I remember the tent up, I was inside my tent. One of the storms was so big, I stretched out my legs and arms because the pegs had been pulled up from the tent, and I was holding this tent down, and this fork lightning was striking so fucking close that I could feel like my hair's like the static, my hair's going up. And I just remember sat there thinking, there's nothing I can do. This is all just luck now. If it hits me, it hits me. I can't avoid this. And it was there was the storms that would get me in the east of Mongolia, whereas it wasn't that hot and water was in its abundance, but the storms were just
brutal.
Yeah.
And so that finish section, what was the destination that you finished at? And then did you have were your family there? Were they not? Was it just like, did you kind of get there and go, right, well, I guess that's that done? Or like, what is the process? Because only, I've only really, because of social media, been able to follow one of these type of journeys, which was Hardest Gizzard's run across Africa. And so, his finale was very much a celebration. There were lots of people there. There was one guy that beat him to it. And then there was just,
naughty that was.
But, it was very much like an event.
Yes.
What was, and we're talking back in 2014, social media, there was probably nobody really, there would have been some people following your journeys, particularly, the locals, by the sounds of it. But what was that end point like?
The end was my logistics manager, his driver, and 3 kids who took a liking to my trailer. So there was like 5 of us, and one of the guys.
They're just hoping you leave it behind. Like, you need that metal.
Yeah, and one of the guy he ran to a little shop and bought a I don't think maybe it was champagne. I'm sure we popped the champagne and 3-4 plastic cups, and that was it. And there were 3 of us, 3 adults. Like, cheers, like drunk, and that was it. That was the finish. And so it wasn't this big. I've found that where I go, it's just often so remote and so hard to get to, like the east of Mongolia, no one and even Madagascar, like the north of Madagascar. And then Shanghai is a bit more reasonable, and there was a lot of people there then, in hundreds, celebrities, press, family as well. It was really good. But the early days, Mongolia, Madagascar. Now, I remember finishing Madagascar. It's just me and my guide, and I think we said yay. We may have
little high five,
taken a little selfie, but then we had to walk 2 days back on ourselves.
Wow.
So there was no pickup by helicopter, no boat, and no car because it was
No
the
private
cyclone
jet
season.
taking you home. No.
None of that.
You've just
And it
finished
was
now, you can
2
carry
days.
on.
Yeah. So effectively, it was 157 days instead of 155 days to do Madagascar.
Wow.
You know?
Wow.
Can you explain? I'd like to talk about the Madagascar one.
Yeah,
There was
so-
a few bits that
Yeah,
I watched
Madagascar
about that.
was
2016, this one's
2016,
a couple years after, right?
I started a year after.
Yeah.
It took 5 years, so I spent New Year out there, and then finished in February 2016.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, when people think of Madagascar compared to Mongolia, they kind of see it as the smaller
I think of the cartoon movie.
and the cartoon. Yeah,
I've got to be
That
honest
is an
with you.
insight into Chip's brain for you, ladies and
Hey,
gentlemen.
you're a star of that movie, by the way, in Melbourne.
I am. Respect me.
I don't think of Madagascar as this vast place. I just think of it as like a rinky-dink, like small luxury island.
Yeah,
Not luxury,
yeah.
but like people go there for like a...
Infested with wildlife.
Yeah,
I know
yeah.
exactly in the movie, pal.
Exactly.
You need to lock in because it ain't like that.
Yeah, that's my home you're talking about.
Yeah.
So, what was the challenge of Madagascar? Traversing across it. What was the goal here?
So Madagascar was to attempt to be the first to hike its entire length, and with this, I'd be going via the interior, very hard to survive, but summiting the 8 highest mountains from south to north. So it was 155 days altogether.
Yeah.
It was about 1,600 miles, and there wasn't one day that was a nice hike. Every day was full on, from utilizing the forest to hide from the bandits who go into villages and just set fire and shoot people up, buses, you name it. So every village that we arrived at, we would have to speak to the sheriff, and he would advise us where the bandits are. So we tried utilizing the forest to hide from the bandits, but the bandits were being hunted down by the military, and they were utilizing the forest. So I exited the forest, was held up at gunpoint by a drunken military officer, and he had this AK-47 strapped round. He saw me, he was sort of swaying, growled at me. His strap from his AK kept slipping off his shoulder, and he kept catching it by the trigger, like with the barrel pointing up at me and my guide. Me and my guide were like fucking moving away. And this went on for 10 minutes, and then a group of people started surrounding us. And then about 2 people who thought I were French tried to break into the middle of the circular crowd to have a fist fight. So they're being pushed back. So we've got a gun pointing at us, a crowd surrounding us, a couple of people trying to break through to fight me because they think I'm French, and the French used to rule 60 years ago and were really brutal. And that was my sort of entry into the first 1 week of
Jesus.
Madagascar.
And have you got someone with you on this trip now?
Yes.
A guide, cameraman of sorts?
Yeah, a guide, a local guide. So I had a guide for the southern section who knows the bandit area, who can help me navigate that. A guide for the middle section who knows the middle section, and then a separate guide for the jungles up north. So I had 3 different guys, and they were legendary. They're like my Malagasy brothers now. We still keep in touch.
Oh,
Great
that's
guys.
great.
How did you find those guys?
Through Madamax, Madamax is an organisation in Antananarivo, the capital, and he's pretty much the face of adventure for everything Madagascar.
Okay.
So David Attenborough, BBC show, anything that happens in Madagascar,
He's in charge.
he's the man.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's Madagascar like as a place? Like we said, we've all sort of shared what we think it is in our minds, but what is it actually like? You mentioned the jungle at the top.
Yeah.
Like what is it like? I imagine it's so rife with wildlife.
Yeah.
But what does the land look like? Like, I don't know if you can just get up some pictures for me
pull up some pictures.
Yeah.
That's got part I'd love to-
Is it
So there's
desert?
an
Is
image
it
in my
only
head.
jungle? Like,
Yeah.
what's there?
It's a massive mix, You've got
Yeah.
the Tsingy, which is terrain, which is lots of sharp rocks. You've got tropical dry forest, tropical rainforest. You've got desert. You've got mountains that it gets cold on top. You've got bare mountains, but you've also got mountains covered in forest, where to climb them, you're not using rope, but you're climbing up a mountain with a machete hacking through the bush, which is equally tough, if not tougher, because you cover very little distance. And in terms of the wildlife, 90% of all wildlife out there is not found anywhere else in the world.
Wow.
So they were on a daily
exclusive.
basis endemic to the country itself. So every day we were coming across things that have either not been discovered or you just will not find off this island. And it's
Isn't
a real
that fascinating. I wonder.
Yeah.
There's probably so much untapped knowledge and things like that.
Yeah.
Would like you said, if there's 90% there, like there's so much to learn left. I mean, I think
So much.
one of the things that or at least I used to think I sort of do a lot more reading and listening about this type of stuff now, but particularly, even a year ago in my head, I couldn't really comprehend the fact that, we haven't explored everywhere on the planet.
Yeah.
The idea that there's places that we haven't been, I go, well, how's that even possible?
Yeah.
We've got helicopters, we've got everything. What do you mean we haven't been there? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's crazy.
And so I used to have that similar sort of take to even just wildlife. Like, what do you mean there's animals that we don't know exist?
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
It's insane, man.
So you're telling me that like so much that were you like coming across stuff regularly that you're going, I just don't know what that is.
Oh yeah, most days we were just like, what's that? And my guide was like, I've not seen that before. I'm like, what do you think people know about it? He was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I do remember that because we partnered up with so all of these adventures that I do, I always look to do it for the bigger picture, not just for like one man and his mission. So with Mongolia, I was raising funds for the nomads who live out in their sort of nomadic way of life in their goods and their tents. And because of climate change, it gets harder for them to survive. And so they're now moving to the city. And in the city, it's one of the coldest capital cities in the world. There's now this gur or this yurt tent district surrounding the capital, and they burn anything that they can find. So there's now this smog that lays over the capital, and parents and mother giving birth to newborns, they're advised to evacuate the city, otherwise your child will die through suffocation within a day. And so but many can't afford to leave the city because they don't have much funds. And so my aim was to raise funds, help them with providing shelter to the livestock so that the livestock don't die off, which forces them to move to the city. With Madagascar, I partnered up with the Lemur Network Conservation, and they have 60 organizations on the ground helping to protect and preserve all of the unique biodiversity of the island. And so I wanted to meet up with these organizations, but I also wanted to learn more about what they do and more about the species. And we came across this duck, I believe it was called the Pouchard duck. And in Madagascar, there was set to only be 20 Pouchard ducks in the whole of the island.
So you found a 1 of 20 rare shiny card duck.
Ash Ketchum, like that Pokemon. But up north, we actually came across this open lake in the middle of the jungle. It was sort of like as we were climbing the mountain, the forest was cleared and there was a lake, and there were 20 to 30 of these ducks. And I didn't know if they were reported. So for example, for that, we sent the longitude, latitude coordinates, sent photos, and the organization were like, wow, we've now, because of that, increased the number of Pouchard duck. There's now like 50 ducks. Yeah. Is that Pouchard, that's it. Yeah.
Their eyes are incredible.
It's amazing, right? So it's something like that. So wildlife isn't really my area of expertise whatsoever, but as soon as they said that there's only 20, and then I came across something with eyes like that, and I was like, is this one of them? They were like, yeah, where did you find this? You send the lads, and then they
I've got 20 of them here, man.
Yeah.
God, fuck off.
We're hungry.
Name your price.
Yeah, so you're constantly coming across stuff like that in Madagascar. You know, it's amazing. Yeah,
so you mentioned about the bandits. I mean, this again just sounds like a bit of a movie plot, really. The way you're talking about how they go into these villages and they sort of like ransack them, kill people. By the sounds of it. And is it a gang related thing? What are they doing it for?
So effectively, they go down south. They go from one side of the island to the other and steal zebu. Zebu are their cattle. So they'll steal the cattle and then they'll take them to the other side and then they'll sell them for a lot of money because zebus are expensive. If you're a farmer who owns zebu, you've got a lot of money.
What is that? What is a zebu?
Zebu is cattle. Kind of like a small cattle with horns. Slightly smaller than the ones that we're familiar with. And so effectively, it's all over the zebu. And so they'll just rock up to the other side and they will just set. And a lot of them are mud huts. So it's like, think Wild Wild West, cowboy days.
Yeah.
Set fire to the roofs, shoot down buses. And they've got better artillery than the military because the military are just getting drunk. They're corrupt too down south. They'll overpower the military. They'll steal their artillery. And now the military can't do shit because these are now very focused, sober bandits on a mission.
Wow.
And so we didn't want to come across either really, but maybe it would have been better to bump in to the bandits. I believe they just want salt. So we took salt with us. Instead of money, they want salt because when they make the zebu, the steak.
Seasoning.
Yeah.
Wait, really?
And salt, and salt is a big deal down south of Madagascar.
You're talking to the right guy about
Yeah, we'll
steak.
get them some salt. Just head over to Madagascar with all my salt.
Was it Zebu steak, did you say?
Yeah.
Did you get to try anybody?
Yeah, I did.
At one point.
Yeah.
Was it nice?
It was nice.
Yeah. Damn, are they cooking
Fresh.
it like, you know, like when you're out there, are they debating over medium rare and stuff like that as well? Or
I don't
or
think
just
so.
getting how it is?
Yeah.
Is this,
Maybe they do.
Is this how it comes?
Well, I mean, it looks
Yes,
like
it
a
is.
fucking steak, doesn't it?
Yeah, there you go.
That's wild. And when
looks
you're
alright.
and did you come across any bandits?
No, we
you
didn't.
managed to avoid them.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it was the military that because you'd go into the jungle.
Because we tried to avoid the bandits, we exited the jungle.
Yeah.
Because the bandits were in the jungle.
So why was it you mentioned that story about like a crowd forming around you with like the military there as well? Why were the crowd forming around you? Was it just because you were somebody that obviously didn't belong?
Yeah, just a white person down there, a foreigner. So they were curious, and a lot of them were fine, but there were a couple of drunk guys who just wanted to fight because they associate you with being French, and the French ruled over 60 years ago.
So do they still hold a lot of hatred towards French people then?
Yeah, on their national day, on their Independence Day, as a French person or really as a white person, you kind of want to stay clear from that event because there will be drunk people that'll be like, oh.
Well, they picked the wrong guy considering you fight Muay Thai. Bit of a lack of judgment from them stepping in there. Fancy getting chinned. And so that scenario and that bit happened at the beginning of your journey.
At the very beginning. Yeah.
So that's a hell of an introduction.
It is. Not only that, actually, the day before, 2 days before, we actually came across a community that had never seen a white person before. And that alone was like
mind-blowing to them.
And this is why it was so good that I had someone there to help translate. Otherwise, I would have bypassed that community and I wouldn't have this story now. But with the guide called Me, always got confusing. Me and Me, we're down south. Yeah. And with him being there, he was able to talk and tell me that's the first time. I was like, what about the older people? He was like, you would ask them, they're back to me, this is the first time seeing a white person.
Whoa.
What language do they speak there?
Malagasy. So it's kind of a mix. French is the second language. Yeah. But it's kind of like a mix between French and their own, which is not like Malagasy.
And so from there you moved, made your way further up.
Further north. And just to give you a bit of context as to what Madagascar was like in terms of the dangers that I really didn't sort of anticipate. So it was the bandits, it was the gunpoint, it was the dehydration of being down south. There's kind of like wells on the beach, which is slightly filtered salt water. There's a lot of malnutrition, a lot of poverty down south of Madagascar. I was bitten by spiders, leeches in the jungle. I'd have to take my shirt off in the tent and pull off a good 6-7 leeches per night, flick them out the jungle, out the tent. The spider bites became infected. We had to then cross crocodile infested rivers a lot of the time. And only a month in, I then contracted the deadliest strain of malaria as well. And that was due to me coming across a community that still suffered with the bubonic plague, such an ancient disease, which I was warned about. And we were kind of desperate for food and water. And they said, look, you can stay here, but you stay in your tent. There's the bubonic plague here. We'll bring the food to you. Stay away from the animals, which have the fleas.
And
how
is that transmitted?
Via the flea bites.
Right, okay, so flea bites there.
So they were kind of like stay, because they had like dogs there and rats. They were kind of like stay in your tent because they had a few members unfortunately pass only like days before. So we felt out of place. We were like, look, we should just get food and water and bounce. Yeah. But my guide, Me, was like, no, it's fine. Like, we can stay here. I was like, okay, I'll just listen to him. So we stayed there. They passed the food through the tent, through the zipper. And it was eel and rice. And this eel smelt a little bit funky, but we were starving. So we wolfed it down. Had to go for it. And the next few days, we were both suffering with diarrhea and we were vomiting. So we had slight food poisoning, which meant that the anti-malaria pills, because I was taking anti-malaria pills, they cover you about 80%. They were going in one way, out the other, didn't have the full dose protecting me. And you've got 4 different strains of malaria. You've got the 3 lower ones, which if you get, they're not as deadly, but they can remain dormant in your system forever. Like poke their ugly head once a year, twice a year. Whereas you've got falciparum, that's the deadliest, and it usually kills you within 24 hours. So I'm there hiking in what must have been about 35 degrees Celsius at this point, managing to still do a marathon a day because the daylight hours provided us to continue with malaria, but I didn't know.
That's what I was going to say. You would have just assumed it was food poisoning, right?
Food poisoning or dehydration, because it was so similar to what I'd faced in the Gobi Desert, but it didn't make sense because I was like, no, I've been drinking, I've been taking my salts and my sugars. What is this?
Yeah.
And like the energy just went. I just went from being like strong and capable to like not even being able to throw on my rucksack, which at this point was 35 kilograms. It felt like 100 kilograms, you know, because I felt so much weaker now. But I just put it down to, yeah, you're right. Like maybe still the food poisoning, dehydration.
So and how long into this journey? How many?
This was 1 month into the 5 month journey.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, pretty early on
So
still.
soon.
Yeah, and you've come more prepared in terms of first aid this time. Like you've got the tablets. I imagine you got them before the trip started.
Yeah.
As a, you know, this could happen. It's very likely we'll get malaria
Exactly.
out there. Let's go prepared.
Yeah. And so I felt very prepared. And with this one, we had insurance, which was good, but there was no way necessarily to get picked up from where we were. We had to push on. And I knew that there was a community with overland transport, that if I can make it to that community, I can get sort of evacuated to the nearest city overland. And I did. And I remember by the time I had arrived at the hotel, because they said they want me to be quarantined. And so they said, go straight to the hotel, don't come to the hospital. The doctor will meet me there. And I just remember collapsing on the bed at this point. This is fast forward in about 5-6 days now that I had been suffering with malaria, just not knowing it was malaria. Collapsed on the bed. There was 3 doctors, sort of their heads spinning. I remember them trying to sit me up. They took my blood. They came back what felt like minutes later. And she just kept saying that you've got falciparum. You've got falciparum. Broken English.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what the fuck falciparum was. I wasn't so educated with malaria as a whole, to be honest. And I was like, what's falciparum? And she kept saying like hours and you'll be dead, or hours and like you died. And I just didn't get what she meant at all. So I was now panicking, thinking, is she saying that I might die in a few hours? What's she saying? Because it felt like I was going to die in a few hours. And then it was translated that I've got the deadliest strain. If I had have arrived any later, the doctor believes 2-3 hours longer, I would have slipped into a coma and potentially died. But now that I've arrived here, I just have to do as she says, take the pills, and she can eradicate it fully out of my system. Whilst the other 3 remain dormant, with the deadliest, you can eradicate it out of your system. So that's the pros and the cons, you know.
Right.
The con is it can kill you within a day. The pro is
if you do survive it, you survive it.
you survive it.
How long were you there? How long were you out with this malaria then?
In the hotel,
Yeah.
it took me again about a week to recover.
Yep.
7-8 days, and within that week now I had lost 13 kilograms. So I was training hard before Madagascar, put on a lot more muscle mass, and it
was gone like that.
And I still had 4 months left of the highest mountains and the densest jungles ahead of me.
Wow. A lot of people definitely would have just sacked it at that point.
Yeah, I mean, you get malaria.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
And so with the malaria, that's through the flies,
That's the mosquitoes with
the mosquitoes.
Yeah.
Sorry, and then so the dodgy eel that you had.
Yeah.
Was that just like a food poisoning?
Yeah, that was
situation,
that was the food poisoning, and because of that, the anti-malaria pills that I was taking just kept bringing them up.
Only
so that made your
slightly
body a lot
working
more
then.
susceptible to the malaria
Yes.
because your protection wasn't necessarily
Exactly,
right.
but also allowed me to survive the 5 days. So whilst it usually kills you within a day, because I still had some form of the anti-malaria fighting it, that's the only reason that I was able to survive 5 days.
So you think without that anti-malaria pill, you would have died in that 24 hours for sure?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, and you were taking those pills every day?
Every
just
day.
like a one pill a day?
Yeah.
Thing?
There definitely was after that bout with malaria.
Yeah.
Any mosquito that came around me, so paranoid.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I can
so
imagine.
paranoid after that.
And did you have any sort of like long-lasting effects from that?
I didn't. No,
Yeah.
I didn't. Maybe that's because I was so young. Like, I was 23. Had my birthday out there, 23, 24. And so maybe the youth, I just sort of, but I've always trained very physically hard. and always looked after my body nutritionally as well.
Yeah.
And so I really sort of gave it a fighting chance, because everything that I anticipate could happen in Mongolia and Madagascar, it's in my mind that it might happen, and I start visualizing what that will feel like. So I try to mitigate all the risks and try to, there's a lot of attention to detail with the expeditions. In the earlier days, there wasn't. It was like fucking reckless.
But now you want
illegal.
Chance.
Crossing borders from India, Pakistan, being told that I need to buy a permit, and me being like, fuck off, I'm not buying a permit. It was like, well, if you ignore us, like if you are caught by the Pakistan military, go on your knees, put your thumbs behind your ears and repeat, I think it was Allah Akbar, which is kind of like, God have mercy on me. And like that should have stopped me. That would probably stop me now.
Yeah.
But back then it didn't. It was just lots of reckless stuff. But with Mongolia, that's when I had to nip all of that recklessness, because it wasn't a case of winning or losing. It was genuinely a case of living or dying.
Yeah.
And so I did anticipate all of the things that happened in Madagascar, even running from bushfires. All of this I knew was a possibility. And I think that's also why when I was suffering with malaria, my family and friends were like, you need to come home. This isn't a flu. This isn't a cold. Yeah. You've got the biggest killer in human history in the form of a disease. You need to get home. I knew, one, that I was in safe hands, because unfortunately they deal with malaria cases all the time.
Yeah.
And two, it didn't approach as shock of capture. It didn't send me into that whole fight or flight. It was one of those, I'm devastated, I'm gutted, but now that I know that I can remove it out of my system, I can push on, because there's now no excuses. I anticipated it,
Yeah.
How many people does malaria kill a year? Do you know what that is?
It changes all the time, but it would be good to know what it was for like last year.
I'm curious, because something like that is, this has been around for so long. I'm almost surprised that there just hasn't been, like you said, you're taking the prevention medicine.
Yes.
So there is a way to prevent it. But why hasn't that been done at a higher scale?
$630K in 2020.
There you go. So see this organization here, Malaria No More UK, I became ambassador for.
Okay, amazing.
After catching malaria. And
so is that like a prerequisite to becoming an ambassador for it?
You got
to get it first, otherwise you're not allowed. Sorry.
Yeah. But the beauty about that, what's better about the world record as a whole with Madagascar is, after catching malaria and returning home and becoming ambassador, I was able to address the UK government in Parliament alongside Annie Lennox from Eurythmics. And do you know that? Do you know, like, go do.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
And so she's got her own stories surrounding malaria. I had mine. And as a joint effort, we were trying to get an increase from the UK government into the global fund. And if successful, that 20% would lead to £1.2 billion, which would go to help save 8 million lives and cases of malaria within the next 5 years. And as a joint team, we were all successul.
Wow!
So just that alone is better than any sort of record. Would I take it again just to be a voice for those people who don't have a voice? To get anti-malaria pills, it's the same price as a cup of coffee. But in Madagascar, they can't afford a cup of coffee, so they lose their life over it.
Wow!
It's crazy.
Do you lot remember when Drogba got malaria and he beat it within a day?
Oh, wait, yeah.
There was a Sky Sports tweet, I've got it on screen now. It's like, Drogba's been diagnosed with malaria.
Was that 26
and then
minutes?
An hour later...
26 minutes later.
26 minutes, he's recovered from malaria.
Am I right in saying...
Wait, was this like did they just get it wrong? Or
they must have got it wrong.
Did you have it?
Yeah.
Didn't Cheryl Cole get it?
Yeah, she did.
Yeah, but every now and then you'll hear
Cheryl
about
Cole.
a celebrity or...
Kilimanjaro, she was climbing, wasn't she? And she got it.
For like comic relief or something.
Yeah.
So can you... You mentioned the 4 different strands. Obviously, you had the deadliest one. The other 3, the sort of lie dormant.
Yeah.
Can you be cured from those, or will it always? It's just about making sure it stays dormant. Like, what happens?
I believe it just, whether you're in shape or healthy or not, I do believe it pokes its head out at least once a year or once every other year, and it just apparently feels kind of like the common cold or a flu.
Okay.
Some people it can knock out for a whole day and they're in bed. Other people it's just something that they have had to embrace their whole life. Like my logistics manager, Giles from Madamax, he has the lower strain.
Right.
And he used to get it once a year, but now he gets it once every few years. And I'm just like, what's it? Yeah, and he's just like, it is what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just a day off from work.
Just a day off. I don't even think he takes the day off, he keeps grinding.
Wow.
And you mentioned there, so you listed off a bunch of really sort of wild things that you experienced. One of those things was spiders and being bitten by those.
But just on the spiders quickly, by the way, I hate spiders. Are you seeing, because I saw a clip of some of those bites that you had, I think.
The infected bites,
Are you seeing the spiders bite you, or is it like a during the night kind of thing? Or
No, so with that, it was because we were hacking through the jungle. So the jungle is so dense, or the rainforest is so dense up north, there's bamboo everywhere. So you're there with a machete, and just to break it down, in about 14 hours of hiking, you'll be lucky to cover 2 kilometers in 14 hours of hiking. And so
go on.
It's machete in hand, you're hacking through, and as you're hacking through, things are stabbing you. So like the bamboo is like razor sharp, really painful. So that's stabbing you. Things are falling from the trees. You're being hit by vines. You're standing on new bamboo shoots growing through as well, which are also razor sharp. And so whilst I was hacking through, first of all, the leeches out in Madagascar sense, so they'll actually climb the trees, the leaves, and wait for prey to walk down below, and they'll drop onto you from the trees. And so you've got leeches falling down your top, and a spider would have fell down my top, being like moving around, and it just would have bit me a couple of times on the way out. And I didn't even know it was a spider bite at first. It was the local who was able to identify, this is that kind of spider.
Right.
I think it was like a small rainbow coloured looking thing. But that was, and then that started.
Those ones with the colours, man. You don't want them ones. Them motherfuckers will get you.
Not venomous, apparently, but because it infected, I found aloe vera plants, natural ones, just breaking.
Is it something like that?
That's the one. Yeah.
Is that your picture?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Oh, God. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was, I guess it was the same spider that bit me twice rather than.
Yeah, just some around
rather than it's
several different ones. Yeah, and were there certain animals out there that you had been told about that they were like, these steer fucking clear of these things? Were there any, like you have the obvious ones and we'll talk about you crossing that river in a second, but just in terms of, look, see these things, keep an eye out for them.
Not necessarily.
Just everything.
The people.
Yeah.
Sometimes the people, whilst they were amazing, a lot of the time, more often than not, they could be sometimes hostile because of where I was. In the cities and on the coasts, it's fine. And especially north of Madagascar, you've got a beautiful coast. It's called Nosy Be. You got scuba diving, you got a resort there, but the rest of Madagascar is left to its own devices, and especially the interior. You've got this. So not a lot of people know, but you've got almost this mountain range that lies central east of the island, almost its entire length. And no one goes there because it's really tricky to get up there and to navigate through there. And that's what my mission was. It was to go the hardest route via and stay on the mountainous ridge. Now, this meant I was coming across locals that hadn't seen a Westerner before. And it was one of those where they might just stay away from us and run, or they might come forward and attack. Luckily, other than the military down south with the guy trying to break past the crowd, it was mainly just people abandoning the trip, but abandoning the village. Now, what was creepy about this is you could see a village in the distance as you're walking, just sort of poke your head up the trees and you're like, I can see a village. There's mud huts. It almost looks like a mud courtyard. There's smoke coming out the chimney. You could hear chickens, dogs barking, and you're like, what? To find that up here? It's not on the map, of course. So you're just like, let's go. Food, water. And you would rock up, and there were people there you could see, but somewhere along the way, they clocked you, and they knew you were coming.
They knew they could see you before you saw them, essentially.
Yeah, and they abandoned the whole village and hid in the bush. So they could still see us, and we couldn't see them. So we were translating, to come out, my guide, I was with Joan out the middle section.
To them.
Yeah, saying we're here in peace. We don't want to cause any harm. This is what we're looking to do. But like no one and nothing. And so we were like, and then we had to leave, and then we would turn back, and they're back in the village.
Oh, really? So
Yeah.
I wonder if that is because of previous incident. They've seen. You're bang on. Yeah, it's because their ancestors passed on messages of how brutal
the French were once upon a time when they ruled. When you see, and normally, apparently in the bush, it would be a French person and a guy from mainland Africa, so an African. And that's exactly what it was now. It was a white person with so Joe, and he is semi. Yeah, and so they would just see a white man, an African, and be like, whoa.
Oh, it's just like they said, here they are. Yeah.
Yeah, so they don't know any different, and they're not connected to the coastal communities and towns and cities. There's no light there. They're just, it's fire. There's no electronics there. So they are completely cut off the radar. So I don't know if they know that the world's moved on or not, but when they would see us, they would just, and you would, wouldn't you? If your great granddad said, if you see this, you run, because they will take your organs. That's what they were known for, coming in, stealing kids, taking the kids' organs.
What were they doing with the kids' organs after that? Is that food? Is it just a ritual?
I don't know. I don't know if they were brutal and they did stuff and then it became a myth about the organs, or. But you do hear all the time. Like, even when I was there, I was quite nervous to go to. I think it was San Diego. What was it called? Sure, it was also the same name. It's like San Diego, but north of Madagascar. And there was a kid washed up on the beach. And with like, it clearly had been eaten by a shark, or something had happened to this kid, but they just targeted Westerners. And these two guys then were pulled in from some sort of embassy out on the street, lashed and set on fire.
Wow.
Whilst I was there. And that's the dark side that the media then spreads. Like, the chances of that, like everything, lots of crazy stuff happens in London, right? So Madagascar is a beautiful place, worth seeing, definitely worth going. More nice people than there are nasty people, but that stuff happens, and they're very superstitious as well. They believe in witches, they believe in bad spirits, they believe in sort of making deals with crocodiles. So many of the times I'd be like, how can we cross this? And they're like, you're good to cross it, we've made a deal with the croc. And I'm
whoa,
like, what do you mean you made it?
They genuinely believe that. I want to see the
clauses on this contract.
Exactly.
I want to see what type
Has
of
he
deal.
signed it?
Yeah, let's see his signature.
He's got his just a paw print in mud.
Yeah.
What is a paw? What?
Yeah.
Claw thing.
Yeah.
But what was hard about that is you felt like the stupid one. Because even your guide was like, oh,
yeah, that makes sense.
Sound, he fucking sorted it.
You're the one that doesn't understand. They're like, what, mate, you don't know about fucking Croc signing the contract, you idiot.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a completely different world, I guess, right?
Completely different. And I'm just like, I'm not fucking crossing that croc.
So you had got to this river.
Yeah.
And you needed to cross it some way. They've obviously told you, look, it's infested with crocs.
Yeah.
But we sorted
and
it.
that it's safe to go. I couldn't.
You couldn't, yeah.
I couldn't. I think sometimes they were unsure, or maybe they knew there were crocs, but they felt confident that it'd be fine. So they would tell me there's no crocs, and then I would follow their lead. And that's fine because they go first. But oftentimes I would just be like, come on, let's not be stupid here.
Yeah.
Murky waters, you can't see a thing, I imagine. So it's just like, just kind of like winging it, like that contract better stand up.
Yeah,
It's
and they really believed it. Yeah, we've made a deal. We will leave the crocs alone, and the crocs promise to leave us alone. I'm just like, yeah, that doesn't make sense, does it now?
Maybe they're onto something.
No,
we
but,
just don't.
But this is what I'm saying. Like, I mean,
they live amongst them, right?
Yeah, they live amongst them, right? You mentioned there's that like 90% of just stuff that we'd never seen before.
Yeah.
And like, look, yeah, obviously the idea of a contract or a deal being made with the crocs. But if you really are living in close proximity, you imagine that they must have a deep understanding of these animals and the way they operate. And while, I suppose it's easy for us to look and be like, what the hell is that? I'm sure if people had gone in there and they kept getting eaten or something, then they'd gone, right, you broke the contract. But there must be some level of something going on where so
you've got to bend to their ways slightly when you're out there, for sure. And that was the thing I always asked was, when was the last person eaten here? And if normally it was within the year, and it's that what put me off. It was like, oh, kids were playing, but they were kids, they didn't know, and they went to the wrong section, not the right section. So that is also true, but it's a case of like, oh God.
Yeah,
that's interesting. So you built that raft. What does the raft look like? Is it you and the guide that decide to build this thing then?
Yeah, that wasn't for that time. So normally there's 3 ways to cross rivers that have crocs, and it's cross where there's locals, because as you say, they live there. They can point you roughly in the right direction of unless there's no crocs and they're like the territory of the croc is further that way. Second option is to cross where there's white water or rapids, because the crocs don't have their territory there. And the third option, the painful one, is to build a raft, because that takes about 4 hours. So we're building the raft here, and it's made up of bamboo and bamboo leaves.
Yeah.
Takes a while. You know, you don't want it to fall apart midway across the river.
Yeah, so you've got to build at least a half sturdy one.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, you've got to have trust in each other as well to make sure that they have tied their knots right and that it just doesn't start dismantling, you know? And so...
Yeah, so
that's
so
you doing it there?
Yeah, that's
so the
it.
raft is
But
big
you're
enough
not-
for two, right?
The video that I can see there in the footage,
Yeah.
that's you just holding on to something and kicking your legs.
Yeah.
So you didn't build it like, you're not rowing across this thing.
No, we're like...
So the
on
crocs, if they wanted a human leg, like...
If they were... Yeah, so we wouldn't step on a croc. So a croc normally doesn't want much to do with a human.
Okay.
If you were to step on a croc, it will get defensive, and it could like rip your leg off or break your leg with a swipe of its tail.
Yeah.
And so that was the main concern, not necessarily that they
Would
might
come
be,
up to you.
although they are Nile crocs. But normally, yeah, at the sight of a human and loud noise, they would go away. But sometimes they wouldn't go away until it's too late and you've already stepped on them. So the methodology here was to try to not step on a croc and just sort of hover above, because there might have been crocs below us, and as long as we're not bothering them, they're just like, yeah, whatever. This guy's...
Are they scared of splashing water then? Is that why?
Yeah, as well. So normally you can throw sticks, you can throw rocks to try to clear them off and clear them away, which we were doing as well.
Yeah.
But the thing is with this, it was the cyclone season, and we just didn't know how deep that river was. So we were just like, right, just to be sure. And then with the rucksacks as well, like I think the scariest thing, what happened was not necessarily the Gobi Desert or the malaria. I've been allowing people to join me, and I need to stop because it gets reckless. I allowed this girl who was like Lara Croft, nails, you know, a lot of sort of experience in the Amazon, and she joined us up north for 2 weeks. And it was the cyclone season. We had summited all of the highest mountains. We were kind of like, it was the home run, if you like. And it was nighttime. We're being pasted by the cyclone, and we came across the Mavav River. And this river I was not looking forward to for at least a few weeks now at this point. And it was the worst time to cross it, because we just shouldn't have been in the mountains during the cyclone season. And so it was at full flow. But however, there was another storm coming, and we thought, as soon as that storm hits, this river will go from like 10% crossable to like absolutely no chance. So I had to cross it. We had to get over it that night. And by the time we had arrived at it, there was a local, and the locals know the river's best, who was sat there hoping that people would come by. And he was sat there for 4 to 5 hours trying to get home, which is the other side of this river, but far in the distant miles of walking. And he said, to cross this river, we form a human chain, and you must watch exactly my stepping, because he knows all of the rocks off by heart, because it's murky waters, enough to keep your head above the water. He was like, if you miss it, not only is it nighttime, and not only is it the weight of your rucksack that will pull you down, if you're lucky enough to not to get trapped or not to bang your head on the rocks, it's crocodile infested as well, further down. You have to watch my exact footing. So we did. We debated it, whether we should stay the night. We were back and forth. A little bit of arguing that night, whether we should face upstream or downstream. And anyway, we attempted it. And Suzanne was in the grasp of mine and Max's hands. We were crossing this river. The roar of the river was so loud that we had to shout to hear each other. And it was complete pitch black. So we've just got head torches shining in each other's eyes. And we're following this guy's footsteps exactly, you know, and we're like even feeling it. And the rucksacks at this point are like 25 to 35 kilograms each, depending. And Suzanne missed her footing, and she then dropped. She was in the grasp of mine and Max's hands. We were now being pulled off. She was kicking up from the bottom of the floor, because she was completely under now. She was kicking up from the bed of the river, coming up for a breather, and then the rucksack would just rip it back down. And it was at that point, with her constantly pushing off the bottom, coming up for breaths, that I realised, if we let her go now, if something happens, That's it. And it's not my life, it's someone else's life under my clock, under my responsibility. And we don't know how we did it. There must have been some good faith with us that day, but we managed to just stay on form with the grip. She managed to get her knee on a rock, push up, and we fucking all crossed it, and we don't even know how. So she was in bits, collapsing on the other side. I was like full of adrenaline, whoa, which probably didn't help. I couldn't believe we made it.
Yeah.
I was like, no way did we got lucky there. We shouldn't have all made it across.
And so was that, you mentioned there about not bringing anyone on, is it for that reason, that moment that you felt when you were crossing it of like, it's somebody else here, that it's under my not necessarily my fault and my my responsibility per se, because everyone's responsible for themselves, but at the end of the day, it is on your journey, on all this. So is this a new thing that you've sort of said, like, just nobody's joining me for this anymore? Or
yeah, it is.
What is it?
That was a lesson that I should have listened to, but I didn't listen to that lesson. And I opened up Mission Yangtze, and 10 people were all evacuated who tried to keep up on that journey. And that's when I realized that sometimes you don't know how far you've come until you see people trying to keep up, trying to do. And that's the same with any industry, with any career, with you boys as well. Sometimes you won't see how far you've progressed until you see someone sort of join you or try to start a business that you've gone through all of the processes and they're new to it. And effectively what would happen is I would allow people to join me thinking, yeah, this is fine. He's ex-military. He's hardened to altitude. He knows about bears and wolves. He knows about -20, -30 degrees Celsius. And then boom, they're being evacuated, fear of the wildlife or injury or altitude sickness, bleeding from the nose, vomiting. And 16 different individuals in terms of National Geographic film crew to guides were all evacuated within the first 2 months. And that's when
what do you think the difference is?
I don't know if it's the experience or if it's being mentally more prepared or if it's with how serious I take these trips. So I put in that physical training. But I would just have people sort of join and they would see the photos on Instagram and think, wow, this looks beautiful. I'd love to join you. And then I was just like, yeah, man, I could do with the company. Come and join me. And they were hit by the harsh reality of, oh wow, this is shit. This is hard.
Yeah.
It looks great on Instagram.
Yeah. The sunset in your picture on top of the mountain, but they don't realize what you've gone through to get to that moment.
Yeah, exactly that. And so Mongolia was the one that scared me the most, even though the others were bigger. So with Mongolia, I didn't know myself. I could sit there from my couch and judge the previous guy who had attempted it and be like, yeah, I just do this, or yeah, I just do that. But until I was actually there facing it, I genuinely didn't know how I would react to being hunted by wolves or dehydration or sandstorms or snow blizzards, to have no one, no van, no nothing with me. I genuinely didn't know what the loneliness and vulnerable state of myself at that point would act. But that also bugged me. I was kind of like, I can't go through life not knowing. I have to go out there. I have to do Mongolia. Even if I die trying, I need to sort of. And so I've learned all of this on the way. So now when I'm faced with certain things, I know how I'm going to react to those because I've experienced not that, but so many different adversities that I've been able to overcome. And so then when I willingly open up these expeditions for people to join me at sort of 5,100 meters, same altitude as Mount Everest, but with 35 kilograms, with wolves, with bears, with no people, with with landslides, with everything that comes with the Tibetan and Qinghai Plateau. It was just chewing people up and spitting them out. Yeah. And it took me a while, 10 people, and then I put a shutdown to the whole trip, which was a pain because I was self-filming and this was aired on National Geographic. So a lot of this I was filming myself, which I was really annoyed at because I wanted that film. I'd already filmed Mongolia and Madagascar. Now I was kind of like, yes, National Geographic, got my own film crew. And they were just disappearing. It was costing the production team a lot. Yeah, because they would send them in. Some would last. My UK photographer, he was looking to join me for 3 weeks. And this would have been great, lift my morale. I'm lonely out there, man. It gets boring sometimes too. And he lasted 6 hours on day one. before he flew then from China back to the
my
UK.
God.
Due to just a landslide. I gave him 2 options. I was like, we can either go this way or that way. Get rid of all ego. You need to scout and tell me if you're comfortable with taking the risk. You know, and he had a family back at home as well. It's like, I don't know your capabilities. Only you can tell me. So I'm going to disappear, leave you for 10 minutes, you know, and come back and tell me what you think. And he made the right decision. He looked and he was just like, I don't think it's worth the risk. And I was like, I agree. So we just
that almost must be a little bit of a weight off your shoulder in that sense, because you have then that same scenario. We'll call her Lara Croft. You know, it's there like, okay, now I know going forward here, it's just me.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about you.
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of leave them to make their own decision. I kind of secretly hoped he picked go home, because I remember scouting that section of a landslide, and as I was crossing it, I just did and it was like a small pebble just darted, you know, like a golf ball just whizzing by your head. And then if that hits you, that would kill you. But even if you missed a wrong footing and you slide then down into the Yangtze and you're there washed away, it was scary for me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, now he's a photographer. He doesn't do what I do.
Not
just as
very
I
experienced.
just as I wouldn't expect that I can do what he does with the camera. Totally different industry. And so whilst I really wanted him there because it was so lifting for the morale, because he's a good friend, we get on, I just kind of knew that he needs to decide to go home, but I can't tell him.
Yeah.
Because he'll then go back thinking, I could have done that. And it needs to be on you.
Yeah.
You know, because he'll fly back having regrets. I shouldn't have listened to Ash.
Yeah.
And so instead I put it in his court.
And, you know, the Yangtze trip that you did, explain to us a little bit about that. So that happened in 2019.
Yeah, 2018 to 2019 is when I finished.
So yeah, there's not much time between these adventures,
There's
is
really
there?
not.
So when you get back from one, I guess we could wrap up the Madagascar one. Like you completed that,
Finished that.
It sounds like you made some really big sort of waves in terms of like the malaria stuff,
Yes.
and all of that, which, you know, is fantastic. And I guess it's like a real bonus. Obviously you go out there and you set out with certain things that you'd like to either raise money towards and stuff.
Yeah.
It seemed like almost in a bit of a weird twisted way, a bit of a bonus to you getting malaria was being able to come back and influence things differently.
It was. And then because of that, I was called back by the tourism minister and announced ambassador for the island.
That is
Even though I talk about the dangers and held up at gunpoint, they kind of are just like, that's part of the
you've
adventure.
been on a journey across the place.
Yeah.
You're the right man for it. And just this, on this one here, was this the one where you signed off for a documentary?
Yes.
Okay, cool. How did that come around? Obviously, you've been on these 2 massive journeys before. I guess the word is spreading. People are watching your achievements. Like,
I think so. I think I didn't do so well on social media.
Yep.
I was trying, but I never really got that traction. And then with the Mongolia and Madagascar, I was not promised a TV deal to say, but they kind of said, if you keep these trips exclusive for TV's more likely to take it. And then TV never took Mongolia, and there was no book, and hence they only making $3,000 on completion.
Yeah.
Madagascar, yes, there was a book, no TV. And then the Yangtze was one of those that we actually didn't get. So Guinness World Records didn't come on board until halfway through the journey.
Of the Yangtze River.
Of the Yangtze River. And National Geographic didn't come on board until after.
Okay.
And so we didn't even have a commission. I just sort of went out there and I was just like, can't believe I'm at this point again where I'm still sort of, you know, grinding away.
Yeah.
But you've documented it all and you're hoping to get it to them and be like, hey, let's do this.
Exactly that. Yeah. And then I think just because of the traction, it was huge out in China, much bigger in China than anywhere else in the world. And so just because of the traction in China, Guinness World Records were like, okay, you don't need to pay us. And you don't need to be a big household name. We are just now involved because of the massive media that you're
That's
getting.
really good because they do charge a fair whack
Do they actually?
for it to be done properly, because there's lots of like stipulations around getting a world record.
Yeah.
And they charge a fair whack to do it by the book. So that's quite cool that they recognize that.
Yeah.
And so about the Yangtze River Challenge, what was it?
So this
is a big old thing. This is a big old river.
So this is pretty much the biggest thing that I could find that hadn't yet been done.
Okay.
And so the Amazon, the Nile had been done. Mongolia, Madagascar, all of these things, I was kind of like, what else is there? And the Yangtze River is one that isn't on a lot of people's radar. The Yangtze River is the longest river to run through a single country. It's only a couple of 100 miles shorter, an extra week walking, sort of shorter than the Nile and the Amazon, which everyone knows of. And so the more that I started to learn about the Yangtze, I was like, oh, whoa, this is badass. The source is like one of the highest sources of any major river, 5,100 meters, which is the same equivalent to Mount Everest base camp.
And they hadn't actually even found that out, though. That's like a relatively new discovery. There's a whole thing about how they didn't even know where the hell this thing started from, right?
That's right. Yeah. So there's a traditional source, and then there's a true and scientific source. And so the man who mapped the traditional source put his hand up and admitted to his wrongdoing in mapping that area and said, I need to correct it. So he then partnered up with NASA, and only in 2009, they mapped the true and scientific source of the Yangtze River.
Why was it so difficult for them to... Why was there the traditional one? And to
So
most
far
people, you just
apart.
go, well, surely that's just the start.
Yeah, I think it was because of the technology then enabled him to see it from a different point of view.
Okay.
Because you always do like the highest and furthest one away. And he just thought simply that, probably because he was on ground doing it by foot, that this is the highest and the furthest away. But then when he was able to get access to satellite, partner with NASA, and really sort of look at the intricacies, he was able to be like, oh shit.
It's actually,
and it was a number of years later.
Yeah.
Decades, I think.
And because of that allowed you to be like, well, it's no one's ever done from the true source. I can be that man.
Yeah, well, effectively, I was planning from the traditional source.
Yeah.
So probably bad planning on my part is we had already done extensive research and got all of that. And this was like a much bigger team now compared to Mongolia, Madagascar. And we did get Guinness World Records looking into it as well and using their teams on the ground in the headquarters in Beijing. And we couldn't find any evidence to suggest at all that anyone has walked, even from the traditional.
Okay.
So it was just personal preference that if I'm going to do either one, I've got to do the most further away from the from where it pours out into the sea. It just meant that I would be getting closer to Tibet.
Yeah.
And this, I think logistically, it's probably the hardest river to hike in terms of not necessarily terrain, because jungle's tough.
Yeah.
But in terms of the politics and the logistics and getting, so I had to get 16 signed and stamped documents from all the different governments of all the various provinces that I'd be coming across. I then needed to be made temporary doctor for a year to be made ambassador for the Green Development Foundation to then get access to the Three Sources National Park. So it was this big spiral of different things that seemed impossible. I was like, well, I'm not a doctor. It's like, okay, but under the desk, there would be some certain things that could be done to make you a doctor for 1 year just to get access to the ambassador role so that you've then got access to the national park where the source is. And I effectively, 16 signed and stamped documents. And even then I was pulled in 5 different occasions by the authorities. The first time was 3 or 4 days in, and I was threatened to be deported. And the journey had only just begun. Not only that, finding the source, getting to the source of the Yangtze, at this point we had already lost 4 members, to include the film crew. One said absolutely not, because it was now bear hunting season, so the bears are coming off the mountains because it's too cold and actively looking for calories, food, before they go into torpor, which is their version of hibernation. And I went out there with the healthy mindset of, you leave the bears alone and the bears will leave you alone. But the locals were like, no, they won't. Look. And they would show me CCTV at the news station, footage, bears going into villages, going into huts, killing families, actively hunting people down. And I was like,
got this video on screen now.
Yeah.
That's it. So
this is a nosy bear trying to just get into look how big that is.
Mate, these things are huge.
There's one, I think, further up. It's actually pinned to the top of my profile where it chases a guy up a truck.
Just
on the reels section. Yes. Oh, is it not there? No, it's not
I'll be able
pinned.
to find it though.
Okay.
I've seen the video that you're talking about, and he chases him all the way up the truck, and then he jumps off the truck to run away from the bear.
That's it.
So what type of bears are these? Are they brown bears?
Yeah, Tibetan brown bears.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And where do they rank in terms of bear?
In terms of size, they are up there, but they aren't obviously as big as the polar and the grizzly bear. Yeah. They were probably about between a black bear and a brown bear.
Yeah, they're obviously quite aggressive though.
Yeah, bear, especially in that season. They have yeah, you're almost there. It's far,
I found it yesterday.
Yeah, did you? There you go. Look at that Tibetan Mastiff as well.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Wow. Those were the biggest problems as well, the dog.
So wait, I was about to say that what
That's the one.
Oh, here we go. So here's the video of.
Yes.
Watch this, mate. So this guy's shitting himself as you would because there's a bear chasing you, and he jumps off. Look at that.
And then I know not the person, but the person who took the video. The bear just roamed right back into the wild, came what it was looking for, didn't get it, and then just sort of.
So yeah, that bear was hunting that human.
Well, I went to bite him and just missed because he actually dived off.
Yeah. If he wasn't as agile as he was, he would have been gone. He was gone. And so I was told, because we forgot the chicken story. We'll come back to that, mate.
We got to hear this one.
I was told by the locals and shown photos and videos, and that changed everything because I went out there with a whistle and a horn to scare the bears.
You must have just been looking at your whistle going, shit. I felt so fucking
And
so did you encounter any bears then?
We saw a bear in the distance, but it roamed off. Didn't bother us whatsoever.
That must have been a sigh of relief then.
It was, yeah. And there was 3 of us and a horse at that point. It was only when I was on my own, which was about 70% of the whole journey, that I was scared.
So originally, how long is this trek? How long is this challenge?
352 days.
352 days. So by far your longest and most challenging, you'd say?
Yeah, I think I would say.
Or just in terms of like grueling. And originally you had planned to do this with people throughout the entire thing.
Yeah.
And you very quickly learned that wasn't going to happen. So what are we're going to have so many viewers here that really just don't understand, you say, when you say, oh, you're hiking sort of a river.
Yeah.
And you're going down through the river, whatever it is.
Yeah.
What are the dangers there? Why are people falling off and deciding not to do this? For me, when you first hear that and you hear that, oh, somebody's like, just walking, I understand it's a long way to go and there's an endurance aspect to it. But what are the dangers here in doing something like this?
You know what? It's more it sounds funny me saying this, but I don't really like walking, even though a lot of the expeditions have been by foot.
That's unfair.
Right? It's the survival element, and it's the overcoming all the adversities that come with taking on a challenge in such a harsh place like these 3 different locations. And of course, to see an area where no one really can get to unless it is by foot.
These aren't like tourist trails, signposted, mate, head down here. Like, you'll be one of very few, if anybody, has traveled these areas, right?
Yeah. No tarmac road. For me, I wanted to get off that from the Vietnam, the Thailand, all of the travels that I'd done in Australia and Southeast Asia. I found that when things started to get interesting, there was always some form of help or water, or because you're on a road, there's going to be people. So for me, it was about what can I do that's fucking truly hard, getting out there in the wild where there's no one and you're out there how the cavemen used to be. Like you fed primal shit, fending for yourself. And it's that was destroying people. It was the adversities where they were like, I do not want to risk crossing this landslide. Or I do not want to. Like, I remember the first film crew that bailed, what did it for them? It wasn't necessarily just the altitude. They blamed a lot on the altitude. But one evening, a guy came as we're setting up tents in this area looking for the source, still far away from the source. The guy said, only this morning I saw a group of bears. I wouldn't camp there. And yeah, that freaked me out. But I was just like, we're gonna have that a lot. The next morning they were like, we're going. So I think a lot of it was mindset, and then a lot of it was injury along the way. It's one thing sort of hiking and running. It's another thing carrying sort of 30 kilograms on your back. it gets to a point where each step just sends this judder pain. It's crazy how painful it can be, really, especially then on no roads when you're out in the mountains and then in the altitude where now this rucksack feels like it's 50 kilograms because everything's sort of exerting you. I remember having a Tibetan guy there, and he was there specifically for the beginning section so that if I get altitude sickness, he can take me off the mountains. And on day 2 of searching for the source, he got altitude sickness and we had to take him off the mountains. Yeah, and this is where I was just like, oh my God. So so at this point we had 3 people. He was the 4th. And at that point I couldn't go alone. So because he got altitude sickness, I wanted to make sure his safety was a priority. We got him down, but that brought me out of the mountains. I was back to a small town, days away. And I was in that town then for another 2 weeks waiting for the right team. So we effectively, the first attempt to find the source was a failed attempt.
Yeah.
And we had lost a lot of time, which puts us in bear season now.
Yeah.
And winter season drops to -40. But we managed to,
obviously, yeah.
And so we were, were crazy. We were there at -20. And it was the point where we had been pulled in by the authorities 5 times, lost 10 members, had all the locals warning of the bears, were followed by a pack of wolves for 2 days, had my UK photographer bail within 6 hours, had another guide disappear due to injury. It was at this point I had my UK team and my China team just call me on the satellite. I had a satellite phone now, even up in the wheel.
Yeah.
I was speaking to them and they were like, look, we feel you should abandon the trip. It's getting deeper into the winter season. The bears are too active. You're looking at -40 and you're sending all of the crews home, all of the people home. We think you take a year off, try again next year because you're now 2.5 months delayed, learn more Chinese, we'll find the right team. But at that point, if that was Mongolia or Madagascar, maybe I would have listened to them. But at that point, I didn't have this naivety or arrogance. It was now confidence and track habits of evidence that I had proved in Mongolia and Madagascar. So I felt confident enough to tell the teams, like, no, whoever joins me, I'll make sure that they're safe. And I do believe I'll get off the mountains before -40. I think with the pace that we're going, we will make it out of Bear County, if you like. And if I had stopped, the next year was COVID-19, which meant it would have never have happened anyway. I just about finished before COVID.
Wow.
Which is crazy, really, isn't it? And that's because of this whole stubbornness of, no, I will make it. That confidence that took over, but from a place of healthy confidence, not reckless
because of your previous experience.
Yeah.
And so you're heading down from the source.
Yes.
You're getting down, and you've at this point you've accepted that the majority of this is going to be done solo. Are you self-filming a lot of stuff?
Yeah, self-filming. Yeah.
And what sort of stuff are you using to film? Like, we're talking like GoPros, things like that. Like, what level of camera kit are you using?
It was the drone and the GoPros.
Okay, nice.
And that was it, which wasn't good enough quality, really. We're not broadcast quality.
Yeah, that's
Nat
what I was
Geo and
thinking.
these channels, they want at least 75% HD 4K broadcast quality cameras, which are big.
Yeah. So they've got like requirements that you need to be hitting if you want it on there.
100%, yeah. So that I knew was a big struggle. So each day that I was self-filming, I was kind of like internalizing everything, thinking, fucking hell, this isn't going to...
They're not going to take it. They're not
going to take it, yeah.
But if you get that footage, man, someone's going to fucking want it.
Yeah. You know what? And Mongolia was never picked up by any channel. And I know that Channel 4, on a good day, if they release a show, they get around 4 million views. And that's good for them. Not just on one show, but for the series, 4 episodes, let's say, 4 million views. I released my Mongolia miniseries on Instagram because my content creator, Jacob, said for ages, like, release it. And I'm like... no, it's exclusive. TV will take it. It will have a bigger reach. 9 million views, which is nothing compared to you lads. But for me, 9 million views across Instagram alone within 1 month. And I'm like, I've just over doubled of what I've been holding back on for 10 years for a channel like Channel 4 to take.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of like, this next expedition needs to be done digitally, needs to be online. And so, yeah, that's the next thing. You know, the next move might be, I've done a couple of TV shows now, one following the Great War, which was that was the biggest break and step of my adventuring career.
Yeah.
Actually, you should film this Amazon series, which we'll get onto.
Yeah.
It's similar kind of the way that Outdoor Boys does, because also it'll be less taxing for you in terms of like content creation and money for editors.
Yeah.
Did you ever watch his content?
I haven't, no.
No,
A guy called Outdoor Boys.
Be right up
Outdoor
your street.
Boys. Yeah, I'll check that
and he
out.
essentially just does very long videos
Yeah.
where he'll go and survive outdoors, let's say for 24 hours in the middle of
Nice.
Alaska. But his editing's very simple. It's literally just splicing stuff together. It's almost like he's dumped it all in a project and just cut. That's all he's done.
There's nothing
But it's
fancy.
very raw and real.
Love that.
You're looking at like 5 million views a video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The guy's just a fucking...
He
That's
just
so
knows
cool,
his
isn't it?
shit and he just goes out, and because he's not trying to mask it with amazing editing and everything, it's just simple cuts and you just see him go out with all this experience and just smash it.
Done.
It's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Could see that
really
working
good.
for you for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way, I think, isn't it? That's the way.
Yeah.
It's,
I mean, like, you know, the idea of TV, and I think it's one of those, like, maybe before going out and doing something, if you have that TV thing secured, then it's like, okay, that makes sense. You know, there's a guaranteed amount of money here. I know it's going to be filmed XYZ, like that's fine.
Be edited well.
But I definitely think, you know, if you're going into a project or an adventure or a journey, and something like that hasn't been pre-locked in and that hasn't been decided on, then just completely committing yourself to releasing it digitally and on YouTube, and then, you know, if you, depending on your financial situation and sponsorships, you know, being able to have somebody at home that's able to clip everything up into short form for you,
drive it towards long form.
It'll absolutely fly, because I'm just thinking now, like even just the Yangtze River situation here, like if you were quote unquote vlogging it, and I know there's gonna be lots of bits where you physically can't film, and that's fine, but I think if I could somehow watch every 3 or 4 days you uploading a video, that is the sickest thing ever. And then you look at the way Hardest Geezer did his Africa thing. And even to begin with, he didn't fully prepare for how to release that footage, and as the trip went on and he became he had more and more financial support, he was able to level up the videos and everything got a lot better. But I can't help but think, if he had known this is exactly how he was going to release it from the beginning, and he was in a financial position where he could have supported himself from the get-go, what an insane episode of things that we would have got. And that's somebody that's for the most part doing the same thing every day, getting up, running 1.5 marathons, 2 marathons someday, going to bed. And that's somebody doing the same thing. You know, you're looking at what you're doing here, which is you're going to have a very different thing, I imagine, week in, week out, encountering different type of people as well, all sorts of things that go on. To see that in some sort of vlog format would surpass any sort of TV viewership that
I think so,
get.
right? That's the step. Like I'm still on better terms now with TV because of the latest TV show, but I also don't want that to hold me back. So I still want to do really cool adventures, but I want to do them for social media and for myself, not just wait and rely on TV, because you could be waiting years. You know, that's the thing. I think with Mongolia, of Madagascar, I was very much like, I have to break these on TV to continue doing what I'm passionate about. And that's kind of flipped now. And now I've got that freedom of, yes, we dabble in TV shows. We might have secured another commission recently for a different adventure. But now I'm still doing a new one that I fly out to next month. And that's not TV. That's just because we want to do an epic adventure.
So you got the freedom to post it where you want. Yeah.
I think the way the landscape now is so much more freeing. And like you said, you were waiting for that next TV commission to say, right, okay, here's the money for it, go and do it. Whereas digitally, you just, fuck it, I'll just do it myself. And that simply was not possible. And, you know, that's not just for you, that's for anybody even listening now. And you know, your thing is adventures, but someone else's thing might be building boats. Do you know what I mean? It's literally anything, but 100%. It's the fact that now you can, the power's in your hands. Before, you're right, you would have needed a TV crew to come and film you, like, and do a little documentary on a guy that builds boats. And then that's it. Now, that power is in your hands, and because of the way the landscape is, it's really just about education and understanding the platforms. How can I monetize my content on YouTube? How can I optimize it for there, and then take it from there, making short form content, TikTok, Instagram Reels, and it maybe all points towards YouTube because that has the best way to monetize your content, which is going to then fund your next boat build, whatever it is. So
100%.
But it's all about understanding and building the knowledge about these platforms. And without that, it's very easy just to go, it just looks too difficult.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because it is
100%.
scary, and making content is difficult.
Yeah.
But once you understand it, you spend time learning, it all makes sense.
Yeah.
And it all then becomes a bit of like, that's just an obvious choice.
And you got an
100%
advantage as well because you're not in a saturated market. Like people ain't just crossing the Amazon every day and uploading it.
That's what I mean.
Very fucking rare. I mean, we got a friend Joe that did that. His was very different. He just goes to the Amazon for 3 days and just tries to survive. What you did is obviously a lot bigger. What the things you get up
it's almost trying to get that reach, isn't it? Because even with Madagascar, I put out, I think it was 6 episodes, but maybe 30, 40 mini-series on Instagram, and it just did not perform.
Yeah.
But with Mongolia, it did perform well. So there's always that. There's definitely the risk element, and I think with me, with TV, the risk element is gone apart from time. And if they want the rights, they want the time, everything is just on their side, and it's unfair.
Base already, you're already tapping into something they already have. Whereas on Instagram, it's kind of like, hey, I need to get it right for it to get that push out from Instagram.
Yeah, and so now I'm just trying to discover how we can get that push out, on socials.
I think it's having somebody that has either worked on similar type of content, but really just understands the platforms. It's somebody that has the experience.
Instagram, isn't there? Like
Instagram,
you've got to be getting the first TikTok. 20 seconds of your video right. Got to be looking at the length of the
that's
reel.
right.
Like, are you keeping viewers engaged? Is there ups and downs? Is it enough for them to be like, hey, I'm going to watch the whole thing, and then I'm going to go on Ash's profile to see more? Yeah, there's so many different things that are going to
as well. I just feel like on platforms in particular, like Instagram and TikTok, that sort of really expertly produced content doesn't necessarily perform well. You might think,
you're right,
I've filmed a fucking masterpiece here, and I have a £5,000 camera, but when I was in Mongolia, I was using a fucking flip phone to film this. Why is this not performing as well as this? It's because actually they're not on TikTok to watch that. They'll go on Netflix if they want to watch that level of production.
True. Yeah.
So it's about, I want to feel like this guy's filming selfie mode on his iPhone. And that's what they want.
It's great, isn't it? Because then that works really in your favor, because there's no reason for you not to pick up and capture something, there and then. Yeah. So even now I've got 60 days to the next record, and I have to, which I'm daunted by, but I've got to get it done. I have to film something every day, like a countdown. So that people now, because I couldn't do this with the previous ones, but now I can show people the intricacies and behind the scenes of what it takes in terms of training and preparation to attempt a world record.
That'd be very interesting to be fair, because you always see the actual world record.
Exactly.
You don't. I'll be honest, I wouldn't know what the training or prep looks like.
And even the meetings and sponsorship, and the meetings with Guinness World Record, all of these different people. I'm going to demand. Look, we have to capture this, even if it's horizontal on the phone. Okay, put it out there.
And in terms of your training, you mentioned that one of the reasons why you think that you can maybe stick it out longer than other people is the level of training that you do beforehand. What does that look like?
The training is brutal.
Yeah.
It looks like, so I still do Muay Thai. So in Battersea, actually, found it a really good one there. So there's the Muay Thai, but a lot of it is calisthenics. Hundreds of pull-ups, push-ups, sit-ups, even for the Yangtze River, it'd be altitude training mask. There's debate on whether that works or not, but I'm all about getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, and to have that strapped around your face, at least builds some lung capacity, and then weighted vests over the top to replicate that of the rucksack, ankle weights around the ankles to replicate that of walking up and down mountains. And oftentimes, with Mongolia especially, because there was that fear element, I was training 3 hours a day, every day, with no rest day at all. And that would include sprinting, flipping the tractor tire, beating it with a sledgehammer, Muay Thai, calisthenics, in the rain, in the snow, in the summer, and I think the intensity ramps it up So that's a 3-hour routine that should take probably 5 hours, 4 to 5 hours, but I allow no rest in between. So the warm up, I had my my producer join me in Wales for the training camp, because he's joining me out in the next mission.
So you said, look, if you're joining me, you're fucking doing the training because I'm not doing this again.
Exactly. Yeah. I do not want to evacuate any more people. And I think people see it and they're kind of like, and I do like it, there's that nice element. People see it and they kind of think they can do it and they're like, can I join you? But it's hard to, it's almost like a member of public asking a professional football team, oh, can I play for you lads in the Euros?
Ball, lads.
It's all, yeah.
Now, when you put it like that, it sounds insane, doesn't it? What the fuck do you think you were doing asking me?
But it's not in it, and I do realise it sounds twatish saying that, but I've only had to be a twat now because I've made the mistake of just saying, yeah, of course you can join, and they've almost died.
So what, me and Chip can't roll with you on the next one now? Is that the way you are telling me politely that it's a no? Because we wanted to make a cool YouTube video. I survived 24 hours in the Amazon.
I don't think it's going to be 24 hours though.
No, you'll be out there. But the reason is for the training plan.
Yeah.
If you were to smash the training plan and like face a little bit of adversity out in the mountains or whatnot, get familiar, get more comfortable with the humidity or whatever it might be that we're going to be facing on the next one, then yes. But what I found with the guys that had joined me previously, they almost didn't take it as serious enough, and that was the reason. So if you boys took it serious, for example, and were like really training and believed mentally and physically you've got it, then it's a case of, okay, join me. Let's see if you've got it. It'll be fucking cool adventure.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of them would just be like, yeah, let's just go. It'll be good. Yeah. And then they would be like, that shocker capture. Yeah, this is good. Let's fucking bounce.
Yeah.
And that was always the hard bit of getting them out of there.
Yeah.
So with Jacob, I'm trying to train him up, and he's a fit guy, he fucking marathon after ultra marathons, up mountains, you name it. But this training is just different.
That's what I was gonna say. I think you had even mentioned that we were talking about like ex-military guys that had come in previously and they couldn't hack it, and so it's quite clearly it's not about being necessarily like a tough person or someone that has extreme levels of cardio. Mm-hmm. It's quite almost like a niche training. Yeah, it's a niche skill set that you need to survive in these environments.
Yeah. Yeah,
if there was a particular one thing, and I know that's difficult because it is an accumulation, but if there's one thing that is like an indicator as to whether somebody is able to hack it out there, is there a particular thing you look at somebody and you go, yeah, maybe, because you excel in a certain thing?
Yeah, I would say persistence.
Yeah.
I would say persistence and pain threshold. One of them is how willing because out in the Gobi Desert, I clearly knew I was now harming my body. My organs were like fucking failing. And whether I continue or not is the difference between failing and succeeding. Would people push themselves to damage their body and get it in the bag? Or would they evacuate? Or would they hesitate and die anyway because of their hesitation? And so I'd say it's the persistence, willing to go on no matter how hard it is, not in a reckless way, but in a way that you've got it. It's the experience of them knowing that they're not in any uncharted part of their mind here. They've faced it before, so they can do it again. It might not have been in the jungle, could have been in the desert, might not have been in the mountains, could have been in the polar region, but they've sort of faced it. So I would say the persistence, the pain threshold, because there's a lot of pain. But you know what? Also enthusiasm. I do think I've had people join me in the past who I think they're just going to last like a day, and they've been in absolute pain. They want to stop, but that enthusiasm's still there. They're still sort of having a little bit of banter, still keeping the morale lifted. And I'm like, fucking hell. That's different. Yeah. So definitely that enthusiasm. If you can laugh during the hard times, then that's a hard person to beat, you know?
Did you laugh while you were being hunted down by wolves? Was that funny? Because you mentioned that, because that was during the Yangtze River, right?
Yeah, it was.
That one.
Yeah.
And what so you were hunted down by a pack of wolves?
By a pack. We estimate 5, 6.
Yeah.
So how this came about this is when Texas Kyle joined me, videographer.
I feel like people from Texas, like,
Is he,
they're ready for this shit.
Yeah. You call him Texas Kyle? Is that
Texas
what we got
Kyle?
called?
Yeah.
Kyle Oberman.
I just feel like I know he's got a gun on him. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
when I think of these guys, they just open carry like this, going to the shop.
Yeah.
You know what? He's a hard guy as well. He was with me and he only anticipated to be with me for 4 days, lasted the full days, but whilst carrying a big heavy camera, whilst all of the rest of the crew were just sort of being evacuated, he was just like, he would slide down the landslide, like get back up, and he's still filming.
Call of Duty.
Like,
He's got the fucking angles.
Yeah, just carries on no matter what. And so I was with him, and we came across a group of 4 older guys, and they were warning us of something, and we knew this, but I didn't know what he was saying. Kyle actually speaks fluent Mandarin, but not Tibetan, so he had no idea what they were saying. But he filmed it anyway. He captures everything. And so they're sort of doing these actions again, similar to the Mongolia, and we were just like, Shishinis, Atian, bye-bye. We carried on walking, and for the next 2 days, we were followed in close proximity. We could just hear the wolves howling, and any distance that we covered, they were still the same amount of distance behind us for 2 whole days. Usually they cover further distance than humans. So we believe that they were following and looking for signs of weakness specifically. Anyway, fast forward 6 months, my editor from Beijing contacted me, speaks Tibetan, and pulls up this one clip. And she was saying, you had no idea what the guys were saying. I was like, no, clearly not. She said they were saying, do not go down that valley there. Only yesterday, a local was killed by a pack of wolves. Jesus. Whether it was the same pack or not, I don't know. But that was quite chilling because we were quite awe-inspired by it, a bit creeped at nighttime, a bit like, oh, they sound closer. But also awe-inspired, hearing the howls of wolves out in the wild. It was like, whoa, you felt so sort of insignificant and vulnerable. But then once we had learnt that, and we thought about that person being attacked and killed by a pack, you're just like, fucking hell.
And what, when you talk about that distance, are you thinking like a couple kilometers away, like a kilometer away? Like what distance is this?
Other side of the hill.
Yeah,
is how close they sounded. Yeah. So other side of the hill, you're talking within the kilometer. Yeah, I felt maybe within the 2 kilometers.
And you think they were just sort of stalking you guys down and should
waiting
you be tired or thinking like they just keep an eye out for that and waiting for the right moment to strike, and that just never really came for them.
We think not at first. At first, when we heard them howling, we thought nothing of it other than, oh, there's a pack of wolves somewhere in the distance. And then it's only when we continued to hear them howl for the next hour, then for the next 6 hours, then overnight, then the next morning, and then the next day and we're just like, they must be looking at us. We can't see them, but they're so close, and they've followed us this whole time, 48 hours. They must be seeing us right now. And I was never really too worried because I didn't know the story beforehand about the lady or the local being killed. But it was only at that point we were kind of like, surely they wouldn't. That's too much of a risk for wolves to attack a person. It's rare that they'll attack, although it does happen. Canada, Alaska, very much known for wolf attacks. But we didn't really feel too worried. It just got a little bit creepy. It was only when we heard that story that we were like, okay, we probably got a little bit lucky. Yeah. We were in 2s. We had the rucksacks, which made us look bigger, and we weren't limping. We were feeling pretty fresh. So they were maybe looking at signs of limping or weakness, and they didn't see that. So then they went on to less risky prey.
And you mentioned about the Tibetan Mastiffs, and you said they were actually pretty terrifying.
They were terrifying.
So people who don't know what a Tibetan Mastiff is, it's a massive fucking...
I saw the pictures earlier.
Like, here you go. Like these are pictures. They are no...
That ain't even a fucking dog.
That looks like a bear, doesn't it?
That is insane.
That cannot be a dog.
Absolutely.
That one looked nice.
So tell me, like, you encountered these dogs? Are they wild? Are they, like, what's the situation?
So Tibetan Mastiffs are semi-wild dogs. They are used as guard dogs by the locals living in their nomadic way of life, where the Tibetan Mastiffs are there outside all the time, staked in the ground, show no real comfort or affection by the locals. In the winter, -40, they sleep in the snow. In the summer, even with long fur, they're sleeping out in the extreme heat. and they are there to protect the livestock from snow leopards, wolves, and even bears, just to scare the bears off. And a lot of the time they were staked in the ground, but sometimes they weren't. And this one time that I remember the most is when I saw two girls with their Tibetan Mastiff, two ladies, and I just walked in shot. So I became visible to the Tibetan Mastiffs, and both of them just ran straight over. At first, I wasn't worried. I thought the chain's going to pull and they're just going to do a backflip. But I realized that there was no chain, and they were coming right for me. And then I saw the two girls getting up and panicking and screaming before the Tibetan Mastiff are even halfway to me. I was like, they're panicking. I should definitely be panicking. And that's it. I was more exhausted. It lasted about 2 minutes, and I was more exhausted after these 2 minutes than I was after a Muay Thai fight. They were on my case, trying to go for me. The first thing that I did was pick up rocks. You've got to throw rocks at them or hit them with a stick, anything to just keep them away. And I threw the rocks and I got them, but they didn't care. They were back at me, and they were so close, maybe 2 foot from me, that I couldn't now bend down to pick up any more rocks. And I still had the rucksack on my back. So I'm pretending to throw rocks, screaming, shouting, trying to kick. I had to roundhouse kick a Tibetan in the head. It gave out a yelp, came straight back to me, and I was trying to keep the two mastiffs in front of me. I was just like, please don't slip behind. And one of them got behind. So now I was just like, throwing, kicking, like turning back. And it went on for about 2 minutes. The ladies were trying to grab the dog, but the dog turned around, barked at them, and they were like, they didn't know what to do. And I was livid. And I know that I'm this outsider in there. They could have never anticipated that I was just livid, because it was the adrenaline and oh my God.
Have they killed many humans?
Scrapped a couple of these.
Tibetan Mastiffs killed any humans?
Oh, you know what? Surely.
Yeah.
Surely. I think there were probably more attacks. Absolutely more attacks from Mastiff than wolves.
Yeah. I was going to say, I would imagine it's just one of those, like, it happens out in these places where...
Off the radar.
Yeah, like, what fucking... If you had died in there, maybe because you're from here, it would have got reported. But if it's just somebody else that's, a local, whatever, it's not getting logged as a Mastiff.
Yeah,
death.
No.
You just die wild.
Yeah, 100%. They go after anything as well. They tried to... So the team crew brought a horse with them to carry their stuff. And when the team crew the film crew were evacuated, they left this horse with us. And even the Tibetan Mastiffs would go after this horse, and they would face a kick to the head, and they would like yelp and go straight back at it. And like, savages. Yeah. Honestly, they're brutal. They were bad in Mongolia as well, but I don't know, on the plateau, they just seemed a little bit unhinged.
Yeah.
You'd always get that adrenaline. You see the dog and you're like,
long day.
Yeah, here we go. Yeah.
So you sort of get to the end of your Yangtze experience. I mean, I feel like I jumped through a lot of time there.
No worries.
But what was that feeling like? Because that had been your longest challenge away from home, everything that you'd known.
Yeah.
Again, is it like that week leading up to it? It's just like a level of euphoria, almost like I'm flying through this last week.
Yeah, it was that, but it was also really sort of painful the whole last month, because it was the last month that I was most bored. I was now on a tarmac road. I was now coming across cities.
And that's kind of what you wanted to avoid. That's one of the reasons why you started this challenge.
Yeah, so I was kind of like, oh God, here we go. And I knew I had completed it. Same thing like with Mongolia, but I've still got a whole month left.
Got you.
So I've completed it because nothing's stopping me now. But every single day, and I was doing big mileage as well, just because that, it must be, I think the most I did was 90 something kilometers. What's that
in one day?
It's like 60 miles.
In the one day.
It's about 40, 50 miles, isn't it? I think.
No, more than that. It's 0.6 miles
0.6
to the kilometer.
Yeah, so it would have been that. I remember
about 55.
Yeah. Just flying.
Mega.
No, the rucksack's a lot smaller now. Waking up 3 a.m. just because you're wide awake and you just like, boom, clean time road all the way. And was just able to smash out distance just because I wanted to get to the end as well. Yeah. Because I didn't like that last month.
Because all the challenge, I suppose, had happened early on in that in that, you know, out in the sticks.
Now it became a walk.
Yeah,
you
no,
know,
just a long old walk every day. Yeah.
No, maybe it was less than 90 kilometers.
But we
it's about 40 something miles. So whatever 40 something miles is.
Okay,
yeah.
Unbelievable.
Still crazy number.
It's still a lot.
Still more than what I'm doing.
Yeah, I'll walk 5K and go, hey, fucking hell, I'll put the numbers on a clock there, you know?
I really want to talk about something that you've announced recently, and we've alluded to it about a million times throughout this podcast.
The big one.
Yes.
But,
here we go.
I mean, this is your next challenge.
The next one.
Talk us through it. I've done a bit of research. I spent some time yesterday looking through it. I saw your Instagram post as well on it.
Yeah.
And it's all to do with the Amazon, and the Amazon recently has absolutely fascinated me. So I'd love to hear from you. What the hell is this next challenge? When are you doing it?
Yeah, man. So this has been something I've been working on now for, the idea came to mind about a year ago. I've been grinding hard for about 3-4 months to get it the green light, and we're at the place where I only announced it yesterday.
Yep.
This is the first podcast I've been on since announcing it.
Let's go.
Hey,
Boom. And so this next one will be to the Amazon. It's 3 world records within one journey, one of which is a world first, and 2 others are speed record. It's to a country called Suriname, which is northeast of South America, probably the most uncharted and unexplored country of the whole of the Amazonian countries. Nobody really goes there. It's 94% jungle coverage. And the only sort of mapping that was done before satellite was expeditions that took place in the 1800s, where they ventured inland to map the interior of Suriname, but only got so far before turning back due to disease, wildlife, injury.
Yep.
And I was actually contacted by Matt Wallace and Dick Locke, 2 lads that are out there who help run expeditions, who have helped Steve Backshaw with like filming Deadly 60 in some sections. And they came to me with this crazy idea of a source to sea of one of the most remote and uncharted rivers in the world, and the most central river of Suriname. And it will take us about 40 to 50 days, but we are fucking deep in the Amazon. Deep. The only way to get there is, of course, by helicopter. Not only that, there's nowhere to land. So the 4 of us will literally be looking out of the window onto pure jungle canopy. There's more forest per square kilometer in Suriname than any other country in the world, which makes it the greenest country. And in the greenest country, we'll be searching for a place to land. And if there's no place to land, we'll literally hover the helicopter above deep waters, and we'll physically have to jump into the deep water. Now, the water is, you've got caiman, you've got electric eels, you've got stingray, you've got piranha. There's a lot that we've got to contend with. But then all of a sudden we jump, and then the noise of the helicopter as it disappears, our only means of evacuation, will then be replaced by the sounds of the jungle at its rawest and purest. And from there, we then head towards the source of the Suriname, of the Kopanam River. Now, here's the thing. Since planning it, what started as a cool adventure world first record has turned into a genuine expedition of exploration and discovery. There's no evidence to suggest that anyone has been to the source of this river. We've contacted mapping agencies and societies across Suriname, across the Netherlands, because Suriname used to be Dutch colonized, and the UK, the Royal Geographic Society. And all of the coordinates on the maps for the source of the river are off. There's no exact coordinates. So we might try to, if we can, map the source of this river. From there, we'll attempt to summit the highest and the second highest mountain in the fastest time in Suriname. There's been more people out into space than there have been on the peaks of these mountains. Then from there, we find the source. We sleep every night by hammock between the trees, inflatable kayak, sort of paddle in one hand, machete in the other, hunting and gathering on a journey of source to sea of the Kopanam River in Suriname. So it is going to be, whilst this isn't a 352-day mission like the Yangtze, I feel with this, 40 to 50 days, but the intensity's just been ramped right up now.
Yeah.
No paths, nobody goes there. we will have to physically make our own tracks with a machete. You've got anacondas, you've got jaguars, you've got all of the snakes and spiders, you've got bulla ants, you've got hornets, you've got the kangaroo that swim up if you decide to take a piss in the river.
We've heard about those.
Right.
Yeah.
You've got everything. So each footing, you need 100% focus every time. Even if you sleep in the hammock and you're like, right, I need to go for a wee, you've got to look at where you're standing. Yeah. And so that's what worries me most about this journey is...
Each day is like a war against nature.
Yeah, and like you can work with nature, because if you try to work against it, it will eat you. Everything surrounding it has got its own little defense mechanism. Mm-hmm. If you leave it alone, you're fine, but you need to know what to leave alone. Like even like a branch, you rub on one side of it and it's smooth. The other side, it's developed spikes and it can rip your skin off. And you just like... So, because everything's out there, it's kind of like a living, breathing jungle of life and death, where there's more life within the Amazon than anywhere else in the world, not just now, but in all fossil records, in all history. So it's just this sort of recycle of life and death, which we will look to be a part of, not the death side, but we'll have to be fully in sync with the jungle, because I do think, any mistake, we're done.
I mean, I've heard so much stuff. I recently watched a podcast. I'd watched actually a couple with him, Paul Rosalie.
Legend.
Yeah. And a lot of his work is to do with the Amazon. Yeah. And it is fascinating.
His stories are mental as well.
Mate, really intense.
Yeah.
And really opened my eyes up to like understanding that we just don't know jack shit. And I think that's probably something that you're obviously hyper aware of. But going into this, you can plan as much as you want, but you won't know jack shit until you're there, really, right?
100%. You're right.
Yeah, and I think one of the really fascinating parts that I'd heard him speak about, and I'd be really interested to know, and whether it's something that you've sort of anticipated, what your plan is bumping into uncontacted people. There are people that live in there.
Yeah.
And is it known that people are in there? Do you know much about this space? Because, and it's one of the more popular things that are actually spoken about when it comes to the Amazon. It's these uncontacted tribes that live in the Amazon.
Yeah.
And their hostility towards people. Is that something that you've thought about, or about in Suriname?
Yes. So far, the lads out in Suriname, their answer is they don't know. They don't think so.
Okay.
So anytime I try to ask them anything about the source or the region that we're going, what's fascinating with the fact that they've led expeditions sort of in really sort of cool locations in Suriname, they've never gone this far west, even with film crews. So for them, they're also in training and in preparation, because they just don't know. Right. And that's what really excites me as well, because they don't have the answers. Just like the whole landing the helicopter, I had assumed, because Guinness World Record are verifying 3 records if we achieve them, I had assumed that there's going to be a landing place for the helicopter, and Guinness World Records need to know what altitude that pad is at. Not pad, but like, cut down the forest, maybe a green patch, and they're just like, there is none. There is in some sections of the Amazon, but nowhere near where we're going. It's literally untouched, and a lot of it is uncharted. So the mapping has only ever since been done by satellite, and that's why the sources are off. So we might even come across stuff that not only maybe uncontacted tribes, but species that haven't been discovered. Sections that I know Steve Backshaw found a river in Suriname that he got to name, wasn't ever mapped.
Amazing.
Called it Ghost River, and they came across this rapid section, which again wasn't on the map, which they got to name.
Wow.
Local Surinamese guy got to, so it's just like, how are there still places like this? It's probably one of the last remaining genuine firsts left on Earth before maybe you have to do stuff deep in the waters or out in space.
Yeah. The Amazon has so much left to be discovered, and there are obviously attempts and stuff to do that, like yours and so many other people out there that are constantly exploring. But even then, it's a fraction of what's left to be discovered.
Yeah.
I mean, you hear about some of the stories about the wildlife in there, and I think one of the craziest things to me was just understanding about the canopy and how that there's actually almost more wildlife up than there is where you on the floor, and the amount of light that gets through, and all this sort of stuff is just fascinating. It leads to all this wildlife that we definitely won't see knocking around, or any holiday destinations that we ever go to. But also the sheer size of everything there is a giant version or the most toxic, the most poisonous version. When Paul was talking about, the size of these anacondas and the snakes. Now I'm snakes are his spiders, I'm snakes. So
this would be a bad place for you boys.
So hearing about 12, 13, 14, 15 foot,
20 and the
20,
rest.
Yeah, and that's what he was saying is like, you can go and capture, you can go and see these things, but he had seen anacondas that he couldn't capture, but he's seen them. Yeah. And how massive they are. Yeah. And they're like, okay, that can't be put down as a record because it's not being captured and measured tail or whatever, but they're out there. Yeah. And people had talked and spoken about how the size of these things, but they're not on record. Exactly. So on record, the biggest will be like 17, 18 foot, but there's 22, 23, 24 out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so I think, that's just one example when it comes to anacondas, but I'm sure that sort of thing exists with all types of species.
Oh yeah, for sure. And you're right with the jungle canopy as well. They just don't know what's up there, right? Yeah. It's one of the hardest environments for scientists to study. They tried doing sections with hot air balloons. Did you hear about that?
Yeah. I'd heard that they'd done it because how else are you supposed to get?
Yeah, they would throw a net. You can actually walk on the net and you'd be able to reach down into the jungle canopy. But you think, what's the Amazon? Amazon's bigger than the whole of the US, right? About the same size as the US.
Yeah, it's
the Amazon alone.
Yeah.
And so hot air balloon little sections compared to the mass. There's billions upon 400 billion trees, I believe, in the Amazon.
Yeah.
It's like
never going to get through it all.
And a lot of people sort of talk about the dangers of the wildlife, but even a fallen tree, because all the trees are connected via vines, it's kind of like a tsunami of falling trees.
They all come down.
Yeah. It's like, oh God.
Well, I remember that was one of the things that he said is like actually one of the most dangerous things out there is actually the falling trees, because when one falls, it's not just the one, it's the fucking lot of them.
Exactly. And where can you run to? You're not
really anywhere.
Yeah.
More trees.
I'll just run to this other tree that's fallen.
It was the same hearing about like the jaguars as well. And the idea, of if you just hear something, just fucking leave. Like it's good, like it'll be loud in there and all sorts, but it's just the idea that if you don't know what you heard, it's probably not a good thing. Yeah. And I can't help but, I can't wait to watch all the content that you get out of because I'm so fascinated by it. Is there a particular thing when you get out there that you either really want to see or experience? Is there something that excites you about being there? Obviously, you've got the world records. Yeah. But in a strange way, that's maybe not your priority. No. It's more about the experience of what you're going to see. Is there something there that's drawing you towards it?
Yeah, I think the Amazon as a whole, since I was a kid, I've always been fascinated. I guess as a youngster, I was kind of inspired by all of these TV shows, like, David Attenborough. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to just be sat there watching it from the screen. I wanted to be out there amongst it. And each location that I've gone to, I've either had a strong connection with the people or a strong connection with the wildlife, because that's all as I'm seeing. Whereas I think with the Amazon, it's almost going to be concentrated on purely wildlife. And I think the thing I'm looking forward to most is being one with the Amazon, is just being there in this living, breathing, humongous lungs of the earth and just feeling it and smelling it and seeing it and just feeling also so insignificant whilst being super and hyper aware of all of the surroundings every night, every day, and just being there, Yeah. And I think a big part is there's certain stuff going on, which I'm not so hesitant to talk about just yet, but there is definitely that side to it. Suriname is a country that is completely off a lot of people's radar. They think of Brazil, Peru, Bolivia, all of these places. Suriname, a lot of people don't know where it is. And right now it's effectively untouched, but there are talks about gold mining and illegal loggers entering, but the gold mining potentially being given the green light by the government to enter the country, in which the trees then will be starting to be chopped down, which then in turn affects the species within.
Yep.
And so if we can highlight, how beautiful nature is when just left alone on the journey, and maybe point to the direction to help with awareness to prevent sort of the atrocities that have been going on in Brazil leaking on into Suriname, then that's the main sort of first and foremost. I've seen it time and time again over the past 14 years where I've gone back to the same country to visit it a number of years later, and it's just it is a mess.
Yeah.
Compared to when I first saw it, So I think the worst thing for me is to see how beautiful this jungle is in Suriname, go back 10 years later and be like, oh, this was once flourishing with wildlife. This section had, trees, and now look at it, football fields worth being chopped down.
You always said as well, like a lot of your trips have a bigger picture cause, and I guess that, like for this one, that is kind of that, like helping save the place.
Yeah, exactly. I think if we can show a true side of Suriname, help put it on the map a little bit, help map the source, and just showcase the beauty of nature when just left alone, then that would be the main goal. How that will turn out or pan out throughout the expedition, I don't know, but I do know off the back of Mongolia, the Madagascar and the Yangtze, crazy stories happen within that become a main focus point, like the malaria. No idea I was going to catch it and then be a voice for it. And so that's almost what's exciting. So what's weird with these journeys, you've almost got to sit down and write what you think the expedition will entail and your thoughts on the country, having never have gone there. Because if you don't write it down and then you go, all of these previous thoughts on that country that you had will be overshadowed with the actual reality of what it is. And then, like with Mongolia now, I kind of forgot what I used to think of Mongolia.
Yeah,
compared to how I see it
That's
now.
so true. And I think making either writing it down or like a little video diary, just sort of like spitballing what you think it's going to be like. That would be sick to watch back.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Meme before the Amazon, then
well,
trauma,
completely different personality.
Look, you've got to make a promise, that if you're out there and you find a river or a swamp, the Fellas River or the Fellas Swamp. I need something to. We're sending you out there to do the dirty work. And we want. I think a river's too nice for us. I want a swamp.
A swamp.
I'll take a bush, man. I'll take anything. Name that branch after the Fellas.
There we go.
Take my little machete and you are now called.
We'll give you a little flag thing that you can just put in the ground. It just says like the Fellas Swamp or whatever it is. But
that'd be fantastic.
Look, Ash, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on here.
It's been a belter, man. It's been a real good one.
Where can people follow this next journey and even go and look back at some of your other stuff?
It's all on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, just Ash Dykes. And it's all there.
Amazing.
I'll be checking some more.
Look, mate, this has been one of my favorite podcasts, and your stories have been incredible.
Very good.
Honestly, really, really cool. So, we'll have to get you back on after the next one because that would be so sick.
And maybe even get you involved in a future one or the training or something where we
let's do it. I'm so keen to do it. Like you honestly,
I'm down for an hour.
Well, why don't you just FaceTime him or something when you're out there? There we go. But no, guys, if you are interested, make sure you check out his stuff. There'll be a link in the description and in the show notes, of course. Until next time, guys, we'll see you all later. Don't forget to rate this 5 stars, subscribe to the Fellas Podcast, and we'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.